Hey there. So it's the 11th of August, and this is going to be my first forecast, my overall sort of planetary forecast for every sign of the zodiac. I've done, a Mercury retrograde one, but I've not done an overview of August. Now, earlier this month, I actually made the decision not to do a full monthly one because I couldn't quite see how to incorporate all of it into one monthly reading. I mean, it's immense what's going on in this month. Really, truly immense. There's so many big patterns arising. And so in this weekly one, I get to touch on the patterns, and give you a lot more detail. So in this reading, I'm going to be including the position of the moon, which is unusual for me, but I think it's really important. And the moon is really playing into these patterns. I'm talking about some rather big patterns this week. For instance, a yod, a grand cross, which is a blooming great big square made out of two oppositions and, 4 squares. Also talking about the Jupiter and Saturn square that is coming up. So there's a lot going on. Suffice to say, I think this is a pretty major week. So let's get cracking. Just before I bring everything on, I just want to introduce myself. If you're new to this channel, my name's Louisa Munson. I do this because I love doing it. I absolutely love exploring patterns and then sharing them with people. My whole mission in life really is to have a good life and to feel good. And if you get that from these readings, then I'm really, really happy. I think astrology is an amazing tool. It gives us the opportunity to plan our lives and to see what's coming up and to plan other things or to, get strategic with how we use our energies. So yeah, if you like my way of being, then please do feel free to subscribe and all of that helps. Anyway, let's bring on the slides and investigate this a bit further. So I am going to be running through each of the days of the week, starting with Monday the 12th. We start off the week with the moon in Scorpio. And by the end of the week, the moon has gone into Aquarius. Just to let you know, I've done quite a lot of videos recently. So the Jupiter Saturn square ones is also relevant. The Mercury retrograde one is also relevant. The Oh My Yod has just been released, and the Grand Cross, talking about our internal cross purposes, that's also been released. So I might refer to those. It's because if I was to put it in the whole thing in this week forecast, it would just be immense. And so, I'm giving you these little breakout sessions. So use them as much as you choose to. At the end of this reading, I'm going to be looking at each sign of the zodiac from a couple of different perspectives. So talking about the waxing gibbous moon phase that we're currently in this week, and how the moon is moving for you, for your sign, whether it's, and you can use this for your star sign, your ascendant sign, or also your moon sign. All three of them seem to be affected. So I'll be talking about those, talking about the couple of biggest aspects and how they might be playing into your chart, and also your ruling planet in this week ahead. How is this going to be affecting you? Because your ruling planet might actually be involved in one of these big patterns. So this is what I will come to at the end of the session. I do want to also take a moment just to quickly thank everyone that contributes to this channel, who, maybe sends me a donation or gives me some form of encouragement. I love you all. This is really a community event. It's from your feedback, from the things you share with me, that I get the ideas to do the shows that I do. So I really thank you. Right, let's get going. So the overview then. Obviously, I've got the moon signs down here. So we've got Scorpio into Sagittarius, into Capricorn, and then finally into Aquarius across those days. But what are the biggest aspects? What are the ones that are really going to be the ones that we pay attention to? So these in red are the biggest aspects. So, here are the ones that we really need to pay attention to. So first of all, we've got Mars in a conjunction to Jupiter at 16 degrees in the sign of Gemini. I'm going to be talking about that in a little bit more detail in the next couple of slides. This is quite a big one. I mean, these aspects happen every couple of years, but 2 Mars conjunct Jupiters ago, it was at 16 degrees Gemini. So I'm also going to check out the Sabian symbol and see if there is a bit of extra info that we can get on that. However, the moon in Sagittarius is in an opposition to Mars and Jupiter conjunction. So this is really big. Mars and Jupiter on their own in a conjunction is big enough. But, during that day, the moon is going to go into opposition with that. We've also got a sun trine Chiron energy. I see that as being really, really helpful and healing. So I'm looking forward to that. We've also got Mars in a square to Saturn at 11 degrees across, that's not 11 degrees, it should be 17 degrees across Pisces and Gemini. And then the other big one right at the end of the week is we've got a square between Mercury and Uranus at 27 degrees across Leo and Taurus. Now, apart from this opposition from the moon, all of these aspects are already in effect, because these aspects are fairly slow moving and they are already coming in, they're already applying into their conjunctions. The days when I've listed them is when they're exact, and then they start to fade out, but they're all essentially already coming in. So the Mercury square Uranus energy, which is absolutely quite shocking, they're two head-based energies, we're already feeling a little bit frazzled and fried in what we know and what we're coming to understand and see. I mean, these are huge, huge times. There's a lot to consider. The Mars square to Saturn, we are already starting to feel that, that the tension between our will to survive and thrive and our determination is, really quite at odds in respect of the law. I mean, when you think, in recent days, I've seen so much news about the way the UK are dealing with people who are perceived as rioting and also people who are rioting. But there's a very strong paternalistic way of managing it the UK has got, and that's the Saturn end of it. And of course, the Mars end of it is absolutely people are feeling a deep sense of struggle and feel like they're fighting for their lives or fighting for the principle. And of course, the Saturn side of it, the government side of it, believes they're doing the best for, I'm guessing for England, but maybe for themselves. I don't know. I do think governments are quite protectionist at the moment. The Sun trine Chiron is already coming in. Lots of people that I'm aware of are doing a lot of self-care right now. A lot of people are feeling a little bit frazzled and thinking, do you know what? I can see where this is going. I need to step away and start finding ways to be peaceful. And the funny thing is, with this kind of boiling up energy, it's bringing a lot of stuff to the surface, which is perfect for the Sun trine Chiron, because it gives us the energy to deal with what is coming up, what is surfacing. Like every time you hear a piece of news or you hear about something via a friend, any sense of triggering, any sense of anywhere where it gets you inside your body, if you feel tense, if you feel, something like clench, there is a reaction. Anywhere where there's a reaction, you're better equipped to deal with it right now. The Sun in a trine to Chiron is really giving us the ability to observe the pain or observe the vulnerability that we feel and actually start to work out what that might mean, even though it's terribly scary. Not many people want to face their biggest fears head on, and yet this week is really bringing it up and into our face. And of course, Mars in a conjunction to Jupiter that I'm going to talk about. Now, we do also have a Pluto, Neptune and Mercury yod. All three are retrograde, and this is going on pretty much throughout the whole week. It's coming into being from the 12th and coming out from the 17th. But that's pretty big. I've spoken about it at the end of the yod video that I've just released, and in the first part I'm talking about yods and quincunxes or inconjuncts, the 150 degree aspects. So if you have those in your chart, I give some advice on how you might deal with those, but that is also something that is playing out in this whole week ahead. So let's have a quick look at the Mars conjunction to Jupiter at 16 degrees Gemini. So this is the chart for the moment that conjunction comes in, and you can see the moon, it's already in an almost exact opposition. Now, it's not quite exact. It's just a degree off, but within 2 hours of this conjunction occurring between Jupiter and Mars, the moon is exactly opposite. So to me, what that's saying is, as this conjunction comes in, it's almost building in strength, and all of a sudden it just feels, if you've got in your birth chart, I wonder, where is your Mars and moon in terms of your chart? Mine are in quite a tight square. And so, I can take so much. I feel it come up, but all of a sudden there'll be this moment, and all of a sudden I will allow that panic or that quick energy to resolve a situation that's not working for me. I will allow it to take over. And I do notice that with people with a hard aspect, that includes the conjunction between the moon and Mars, the square between the moon and Mars, the opposition between moon and Mars. You'll only take it to a certain point. And then when you reach that threshold, all hell breaks loose. So, this is potentially quite a catastrophic energy, and if you've got, and this is also quite interesting as well, the moon and Jupiter in a conjunction has a particular kind of energy. The moon in a square to Jupiter also has a different energy, and the opposition. Now, the moon and Jupiter together brings up a lot of faith-based issues, a lot of spirituality-based issues, and it absolutely tips the emotions over the edge. If you think about it, Jupiter makes things bigger, Mars makes things more ferocious or more aggressive or assertive, like standing up for yourself. Let's not confuse standing up for yourself to attacking somebody. They are very different energies, but they're both Martian energies. They are effectively like a defense. You are clearly marking where you think you're allowing people to come close to you or impact you. So the moon is about our emotions, and so this opposition is immense. These emotional energies, and also the feeling of maybe wanting to defend yourself, and then the Jupiter, which ignites it, makes it feel justified, makes it feel like there is something almost spiritual going on, but it magnifies the energy, suffice to say. So this is a huge energy going on the 14th. Now, thankfully, the moon will move out of this position quite quickly. Now, you might also notice, look, what we've got here as well. We've got this very tense grand cross, sometimes known as a grand square, where we've got this opposition between Venus and Saturn, and also Jupiter and Mars and the moon. I do talk about this in it's quite in this episode here called Grand Cross. So if you've got a grand cross, if you've got something that resembles this shape in your birth chart, that might be useful. But yeah, this is all about the Grand Cross. I do talk about it at a little bit more depth. Now, this particular energy of Jupiter and Mars happens every 2 years, pretty regularly, in fact. I pulled up the stats on astro-seek.com. I looked for how often this comes about. It comes about every 2 years. And you can clearly see it laid out, with all the dates and stuff. But then I looked over the space of 100 years to see, like, when was the last time it was in Gemini and how often it happens in the sign of Gemini. And over 100 years, there were 47 that occurred, but only 3 in the sign of Gemini. And that third one is this one. So it's really not common. Pisces was only twice. And there were lots of signs that had it many times, I can't remember which ones now, but I did write it all down. But, so this is the rarer of the Mars and Jupiter conjunctions. And what fascinated me, you can see the dates here. So 1989 was the last one. So that's 35 years ago. And then, we've got 1942, so a really, really long time ago. And it was back then, it was at 16 degrees 21. And right now it's at 16 degrees 40. I always think that when planets come together, it creates a starting point. I sometimes call them seed points. Some people might call it a critical degree of some sort. It's almost like stamping a little. It's like creating a little energetic hook that we can all like pull into or understand or feel or perceive in our own ways. And if this hook is on one of our personal planets or on one of our angles, then it will probably feel quite personal, and you're probably likely to feel some very strong emotions. But, you know, I'm guessing I'm guessing you weren't around in 1942. You might be, but when I look at my viewers, the chances are you're not from 1942. But there is an energy of what was started in 1942 coming back, or, you know, there's a kind of shared energy resonance is what I'm suggesting. Now, of course, in 1942, I mean, we're talking April 1942. I did look back in the on this day app to see what was happening a couple of weeks either side. And there was a lot of stuff going on about World War II. And, you know, I'm not a historian. I haven't looked at World War II in any great details. But to me, it feels like some of the themes of maybe the world perceiving itself to be in a war. I'm not sure if America got involved at that time. I don't know. You can tell me if you know more. But to me, it feels like there is a sense that there is something going on that everybody seems to be aware of now. You know, it seems like everybody's in, or at least not everybody, you know, like it just feels like there's a lot going on, and the people who are maybe recognizing themselves as kindred cultures, you know, maybe the Western world I might be talking about here predominantly, but to me it just feels like there's a much bigger connection throughout the world, given that the last time this happened, it was at the same degree as it was in 1942. I mean, if you think about it, Gemini is a very social sign. It's a sign of commerce, which is huge. You know, if you think of, you know, Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, and Mercury is about buying and selling. It's about moving information around really, really quickly. And it's a traveler. Like Mercury is moving around a lot and very, very quickly. So whatever is going on, I think, is happening quickly, with maximum impact. So and if you bear in mind as well that, you know, Mercury is also retrograde. Now, I know that doesn't seem important, but these guys are in a Mercury ruled sign. So I think it does have a bit of relevance. And the fact that we've got this tight square, you know, like if your finances or your future finances are based somehow on some kind of investments and some kind of scheme that you're hoping stays stable, then I would be very curious. Now, I'm not a financial advisor and I'm definitely not a financial astrologer, though I have to say it does interest me. But, you know, I might be exerting a bit of caution right now because, you know, things are looking like they're ripe for being kind of sort of, I don't want to say blown apart because it's quite leading language, but it feels like things are really coming into the public eye, you know, into the public focus in a very, very dramatic way. So if you think about it, like it could affect our information, it could affect our money, it could affect a lot of things. So I would be very cautious around the markets. If you're working from home, if all of your stuff is on a computer drive, I would back things up. You know, I think this is a time to be really cautious and be prepared. Because I do think that something like this could take us by surprise. If you have a look, you'll also see the yods going on. And like I said, I explain the yod in much greater detail in the video that I released today, right in the last section. I think it's about 10-15 minutes. So, you know, there is also that. And the finger is pointing to Mercury retrograde, really showing that the people right now who have been very rational and trying to rationally find out what's going on are now starting to create new stories and look into the past and make connections about things that appear to be changing. And how do we, like, the yod is very much about holding two seemingly incompatible truths or thoughts and making them work. So one idea here is, you know, humans are coming back into this feeling of sovereignty. You know, they aren't wanting to necessarily not be important. We want to be in our stories. And at this end of the yod, there's this very depersonalized disappearance of the human story, you know, because Neptune at 29 degrees in sign of Pisces is almost dissolving the reality as we know it. So there is some very big stuff going on at the moment. And this is big. And the Mercury yard is also big. So yeah, I just wanted to put it there. I think the next slide is about the Sabian symbol for 16 degrees in Gemini. Let me just check. Oh, hang on. No, there it is. Let's just see what this says. Oh yeah, so there are big things going on. So, you know, just to be clear and to lay this out, we've got Mars, Jupiter in opposition to Moon in Sagittarius, square to Saturn, square to Venus. It's a grand cross, and thankfully it's fleeting, because once the Moon moves out the way, some of that pressure goes. And of course, Venus moves fairly quickly. So within a few days, Venus will be out of this T-square. So it starts off as just the square between Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. Then Venus comes into the square, slowly moves into place, goes into these squares here and also into opposition. Then the Moon comes in and it's ramped right up. The Moon disappears out of the way. Venus moves on and it starts to deconstruct again. And also Mars is moving on as well. So we are left with Saturn and Jupiter. But one thing I would say is it is worth watching what is happening throughout this whole time with Jupiter and Saturn in this square, because there will probably be other grand crosses that come up, you know, as the planets move. In particular, when we come to the Sagittarius season, you know, and the Sun, Mercury, and Venus comes over this point, and then the Moon comes up here in Virgo. We're going to have a sort of reconstruction of this. Only in Sagittarius time, I know Mercury is going retrograde again. So I haven't looked at that particular chart, but I'm sure as Mercury goes retrograde, it's very likely to come into this square. So I do think whatever is taking place right now is likely to have a aftershock or a similar resonance to what's going on in December. So I just think, you know, we don't need to panic at all, because I don't think panic is helpful. You know, like, how does that serve us? It doesn't. But to be cautious and to be aware that these are changing times. And when you look at your own level of consciousness and awareness, and if you're feeling a little bit uncertain, and then you see the next person near you and you see that person over there, when you realize that a lot of people are feeling a bit cautious right now, a little bit concerned, a little bit agitated, a little bit surprised, there's lots of different emotions that are not the everyday emotions that people are feeling. It feels like the dial is being just turned up, and turned up. And that is absolutely what is happening around the 14th. It's like turned right up. Now, hopefully this yod will give us a sense of new beginnings, because wherever the finger is pointing is giving us a clue as to what we need to focus on to be able to resolve all these issues. And the fact that Mercury's retrograde is showing that whatever is going on is changing. And of course, by the time the yod finishes, Mercury is in the sign of Leo. So wherever it started from, it's shifted to. Who knows how this is going to go? But these are very active times. Now, just to check in with the Sabian symbol, if you're aware, Sabian symbols, there are 360 of them. I've spoken with Linda Hill, who wrote a fantastic book, you know, Sabian Symbols, 360 Degrees of Wisdom. You can see her website, www.sabiansymbols.com. And if you go there and you click on, I think roughly it's in the middle of the screen, and you click My Symbols, and then in the drop-down menu, I think it's Find My Symbol or something like that. And what you do is you always put in the degree you're looking at. And so we're looking at 16 Gemini. Now, with Sabian symbols, they always get rounded up to the next symbol, the next degree. And so if you click on the 16, then click on Gemini, and then click Find My Symbol, Linda's amazing website will automatically round up and bring up the next degrees meaning, which is Gemini 17. But there are 360 different channeled and beautifully refined and observed, like mini stories or meanings. They are like beautiful totems. They are like beautiful little moments of almost peculiar and also spectacular truth. And so it's really interesting. You know, if you haven't done it already, check out I've done a couple of shows with Linda where she shows us some good examples, but check out where your sun is. which Sabian symbol relates to your sun. You might be quite surprised. But anyway, this Mars conjunct Jupiter is called the head of a robust youth changes into that of a mature thinker. Well, isn't that interesting? Given that, Mars conjunct Jupiter is really quite a big energy. It's really not about thinking. It's about acting first and then thinking after. So this is really suggesting that we are going through a process, and maybe part of this sort of expansion, this rapid, quick, possibly assertive, possibly aggressive, possibly angry expansion is occurring because of our thinking. So it says this symbol shows how at times in our lives we seem to or need to grow up and mature. We realize there's only so much that one can do with youthful force. That's interesting, because Mars conjunct Jupiter in the sign of Gemini is an absolute description of youthful force. This symbol shows that it is time to use mature thinking, using your intellect and intuition, and being able to take in the consequences and responsibilities of one's actions. Fascinating. Allowing mature wisdom to come through, there can be a feeling of one's mindset changing and growing. Responsibilities are taken on board, and it's time to stop tearing around and to be more serious about life and its ramifications. Going from reacting with the lower emotional nature to thinking with the higher mind, pondering, thinking things through, finding answers. I love that, finding answers, a state of stillness, forever young. Now, one of the things I really like about that, thinking things through and finding answers, is Jupiter is also very much to do with our spirituality and religion, but also I think higher thought in some way. He's not known for like being a thought planet necessarily. I would say that's Mercury and Uranus, but Jupiter, he is also about good statesmanship, I think, and the feeling of optimism and hope, but tempered. If you're thinking about spiritual hope or spiritual optimism, you might be trying to get to the core of things and seeing things as they are. And maybe Mars can give us the energy to do just that, thinking things through, finding answers, because Jupiter and Gemini actually have a sense of curiosity, and Mars is absolutely looking for a practical result. And also these kinds of inquiries do keep us young because they keep us on our feet. So you might find that with this Mars conjunct Jupiter, you use the insightful explosion of energy to ponder through something, to make some headway, to find some answers. That might be a really good use of the planetary energy. So that's quite big. Anyway, let's move on and look at this more from a day-to-day perspective. So I've already run through these bigger aspects, but let's fill in some of the gaps. So on Monday the 12th, the moon is in a trine with Saturn at 17 degrees in the sign of Pisces. The moon is also square the sun at 20 Leo. Now, this is interesting because I think that this is great book, which the name of it is eluding me right now, but Astrology and the Games That People Play. And it's a book that talks about the transactional analysis, or triastral, is it called? Transactional analysis. It's using transactional analysis and astrology and kind of blending them together. The idea of the adult, the parent, and the child. And in this kind of astrology, the child is the moon, and it shows our more creative, more childlike, more vulnerable state. The sun shows our ability to be grown-ups and to be adult and to be assertive. So it's neither aggressive nor dismissive or passive. And then Saturn, which is the parent of the piece. And one of the things that this book really talks about is when they're in some kind of alignment, things are quite easy. So these are the three archetypes of the human personality: the adult, the child, the parent. So it's interesting that, the moon and Saturn are both in water signs in a harmonious state. To me, that's saying, the energy of parenting yourself, but also nurturing your inner child is really quite helpful. This could be a day when you can feel like you can progress. almost where your emotions don't take over the show too much, where you have an ability to be quite mature. Saturn is really trying to get us into a sense of spiritual maturity. It's adding a bit of strength to some of our more intuitive ways of being. And so having the moon in Scorpio, which is really, really deep, and sometimes a bit problematic, it does make us quite resistant, it does make us super proud, does make us really quite certain about things, and possibly, I say possibly, it can bring out a real sort of defensiveness in us and a little bit of an attack energy, especially when the moon in Scorpio is threatened. But, Saturn here, I think you're able to talk yourself out of any big emotions. You're able to reason with yourself. You're really able to do that. Where some of the energy that you might be feeling like you want to attack or lash out, I think is coming from the sun. The sun at 20 degrees Leo is in a square to the moon. And so, at some level, you're wanting to feel quite accomplished. The sun's in its own sign. This is a time when we're really wanting to feel like we are, doing well in life, like we are in the right place. We are seen, we're observed, people like us, people respect us. And so anywhere where we might not feel respected, I think that sort of sting in the tail is likely to come up. We are more likely to feel a little bit more rash and ready to snap. But I do think we've got the ability to reason with ourselves as well. Saturn is actually quite helpful there. So Monday could be difficult if we are really playing into our ego. If we are absolutely in our ego and afraid to feel like we are shown up, if we're really leaving ourselves wide open for that could be a real danger. But just remember, on Monday we can talk ourselves out of it, we can calm ourselves down. And if you can't, then get yourself around somebody that can see that in you and can do it for you. This is a time when we can take responsibility, and actually, funnily enough, by managing our emotions and taking full responsibility for our emotions, we will get seen and respected and admired for who we are. We will make that work. And of course, the moon will move on. And as we go into Tuesday, the 13th, we've got this handover from the moon in Scorpio right over to Sagittarius, where things get, the moon is a lot more expressive, I would say, not so pathological, not so intense, but a lot more freedom-based and possibly a bit more disrespectful. It's a bit, I always think the moon in Sagittarius is a bit like being a punk, like being, really quite naughty. I mean, it's quite harmless, it doesn't really want to cause any big distress, but, the moon in Sagittarius wants its freedom. And if you try and pin it down in any way, shape or form, it will kick you to the curb. It will kind of bolt and run away. Now we're going to have the opposition to Uranus before the moon goes into Sagittarius. So let me talk about that first. So the moon in opposition to Uranus is quite interesting. It's really bringing up the need for us to feel free, the need for us to feel like we know the truth about things. So I do think Tuesday the 13th is a big truth day, because both Uranus and the sign of Sagittarius are really, really concerned with the truth of things and the openness of things. And they're both very philosophical. So this sort of moon in Scorpio opposite Uranus is really giving us a questing intensity to open things up and kind of pull the plaster off to see what's going on. We are wanting to fearlessly look at things. It's not calm energy. This isn't energy that's, kind of meeting the parents kind of energy if you're new in a relationship, not unless you want it to be quite, I'm not saying it would go terribly, but it's likely to be quite eclectic and slightly edgy. And then the moon makes a trine to Neptune. Now, I like this. This is almost like, we are feeling quite edgy, and then we're getting a bit transcendent. We can allow what we've seen to, surprise us and maybe take us into a bit of an altered state. But then when the moon goes into Sagittarius, we are absolutely up for an adventure again, and we're feeling quite philosophical. So I would say there's a lot of change going on the 13th, behind the scenes. And then the moon goes into a square to Mercury retrograde in Virgo. And so, again, the Sagittarius energy is known for being tactless and speaking before really thinking it through, especially when you think about the other things that are going on. It's likely to, make us a bit more fearless and to, speak our words and leave some offense in the way. The moon in a square to Mercury gives us this real desire to get things off our chest, especially when it's retrograde. We are maybe unusually talkative. We're not working under the usual rules that we might hold ourselves by. So this is interesting. Wednesday, the 14th, is obviously a massive day, and I've already spoken about it quite a lot. The moon is also in a square to Venus, which I didn't explicitly sort of describe or forecast, but, that creates a certain amount of ardent emotions. We start to feel a little bit jealous or a little bit possessive. There are much more energies playing into the mix. With that square to Venus. Obviously the opposition to Mars and Jupiter is big, and the conjunction between Mars and Jupiter is also big, as is the square to Saturn. But there's a lot that I've already spoken about this. As we head into, so Wednesday is a day, like if there was a day to not do anything too important, that would be your day. If there was a day when you could take a day off, do something that is using the energies of tension to create a great product. Like if you're doing something creative where it was in a time trial, like where you had to do things in a certain period of time, where you're tested to your utter limits, that would be a good day to do it, because the energy of the Grand Cross is to test you. Now, I do think the Grand Crosses have this brilliant ability as well. They sound awful because they are testing us. They are pushing us to our limits, but it's when we're pushed to the limits that we do something new. We're not going to come up with something new and unusual and great and fantastic if we don't push ourselves. So, Wednesday the 14th is a day when you might want to push yourself, but why don't you plan to push yourself? And I don't mean push yourself physically, unless you are really, really competent and really, really sure that you're not going to injure yourself. But, if you're not an active person, then you push yourself on the 14th. That's not so wise. But if you're creative, if you're wanting to find a solution to something, Wednesday could be your day to really push yourself. But this isn't a day when I would be wanting to sign things necessarily. It's fraught with tension. Now, as we come into Thursday, obviously that tension is abating. And then later on in the day, the moon does go into the sign of Capricorn. But before it does, the moon in Sagittarius makes a trine to the sun. That's a relief. That's nice. It makes a trine to Chiron. Now, if you think about it, there is the sun trine Chiron, and then we've got the moon trine Chiron coming in. So that's beautiful. The sun, the moon, and Chiron in a grand trine. That's beautiful. So we can heal the soul. We can really look at our ego in a completely different way. And I see that as being a moment of being open about our vulnerabilities. We can really open ourselves up. It's beautiful. This is a time when, maybe the tension that you've revealed the day before and found something quite great about yourself, maybe on Thursday the 15th, you're unpacking it a bit and marveling over it and just thinking, oh, wow, I don't know what happened there, but boy, something's come up from it. And here it is, so I think this is quite good. The moon is also making a square to Neptune. Now, this is a bit tricky. It brings up feelings of, I think we kid ourselves sometimes, the moon I've got my moon in a square to Neptune. We can be away with the fairies. It does bring up an extreme level of intuition, which can be totally scary. It can bring up too much. So we are really, really open, but this could really work in the favor of the fact that there is this grand trine, between the moon, the sun and Neptune. I see this as being helpful, and it's trine Mercury again. So it's bringing in this energy of, it's bringing in the energy of talking, but from a different perspective. So where we're talking things through on Tuesday, it's in the rise of tension towards this great big grand square. But now we're the other side of it. It's like the difference between, when you've been to a wedding and everyone's partying and there's lots of big emotions, but the day after the wedding, that's often when lots of people chill out and they chat, and so I get the feeling this is, I don't want to say it's the big hangover day, but it's the day when we might be a bit calmer. We've already got a lot of our emotions out of our system, and we can, I don't know, there's a bit more space to talk, but to share and to hear each other. So I like that. And the moon then goes into Capricorn. And that's going to calm things down a bit. Our feeling function, our emotional readiness to go into our feelings is dialed right down. That's great. That's helpful. And then Friday, Mars goes into its exact square with Saturn. But like I said earlier, it's already in a square with Saturn. It's just exact on Friday. But that's quite helpful if you're trying to do things that require a lot of patience, but also, I said require patience. I mean, Mars won't thank me for saying that, but Saturn stuff sometimes requires us to really pay attention to things and to really use a lot of skill. And so what I really see with Mars and Saturn is the ability to go deeper, work harder, and push ourselves a lot more than usual. So to me, this is a day that requires us to be a lot more complete with the efforts that we do. I really feel that where we don't put enough effort in, we will probably balls things up to quite a great degree. So I would say on Friday, do not let things lie. Don't absolutely don't underdo things. Do things to the right level. And then later on, the moon is in trine to Venus. Now that's useful. So I really see this as us working hard on Friday and then being able to relax and feel a little bit more human, connecting to the people that we love, and feel a bit more gentle. Saturday, then the 17th, we've got the moon in Capricorn in a sextile to Saturn. I really see that that's a time when we can feel a bit more responsible. It's like emotionally responsible. We're not about to let our emotions steal the show, but we are, we're a bit more mature. I like that. I find that helpful. Then the moon is in a square to Chiron, which might make us feel a little bit tense. And a little bit vulnerable. It goes into a trine with Uranus, which then makes things a little bit sort of interesting, a bit exciting almost. And the sextile to Neptune is quite dreamy. So Saturday, with all those moon changes, seems to me it's like 4 seasons in one day. Are we responsible? Then we're getting a bit vulnerable or a little bit burdened. Then we're up for a bit of an adventure, and things seem to feel a bit magical. So there's a lot going on. And then finally, at the end of the day, the moon goes into Aquarius, and then it comes into a conjunction with Pluto. Now, moon conjunct Pluto is super duper intense. So it really is an emotional day. It's like an emotional roller coaster. And then as we come into Sunday the 18th, we've got that really strong square between Mercury and Uranus, which I spoke about in the overall forecast for August. Whew. So it's a big week. I would say Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday are the days to really pay attention. So Tuesday we're feeling the tension, Wednesday it's rising and it's kind of a fever pitch, and then Thursday it starts to come back down. And then I really think Saturday, like the end of Saturday and into Sunday, is particularly epic. So you can see why I wanted to break this down. I couldn't just do it in one great big August overview. This is almost like a month's worth of stuff in 1 week. So there you go. That's the headlines for the month ahead. Now let me have a look at all the individual signs. Like I said, each of these forecasts you can take for your sun, your ascendant or your moon. And let me know in the comments how useful you find that. Do you find that each of your forecasts works for the particular things that I've suggested they work for? I'm really keen to see. I've been doing this a lot with my own. It's weird listening back to myself, but yeah, I'm really curious to see how you find it, the new format and everything. But anyway, let's have a look at these forecasts now. Hey there, Aries. So this is the forecast for the week ahead. I don't normally do them like this, so bear with me. Hopefully this will go well. It's a bit of an experiment at the moment. What I'm going to look at in this short forecast for the week ahead is give you a bit of a heads up about where this waxing gibbous moon phase is going for you, talk about the impact of the biggest aspects that are going on for you in this week ahead, and then also talk about your ruling planet and what it might be doing. In fact, I might start with a ruling planet. So your ruling planet, whether we're looking at this from your sun sign, if we're looking at this from your ascendant, or even if we're talking about the ruler of your moon sign, the energy of Aries is ruled by Mars. Now, obviously, Mars is in a huge conjunction this week, right here in the sign of Gemini with Jupiter. So this is a pretty big week for you. Right now, I mean, this is a big aspect for you because, any sort of energy that you have is absolutely feeling magnetized right now. So, you may well notice that you're feeling a lot more determined, a lot more energetic, possibly a lot more agitated, or irritable, like you don't have enough hours in the day. You're waiting for something to happen so you can just crack on. You're really quite impatient, in this week ahead. It's almost like you're needing to slow down a bit, but you really can't, because there is a joy with having this level of energy. And yet this energy is also playing into a lot of different things. So my question to you, Aries, in this week ahead is, how can you free this energy up to use it in a way that feels, dare I say, unburdened? I know that's a word that's used so much at the moment. But, how can you feel unburdened with the energy of Mars in a conjunction to Jupiter without feeling the tension of Saturn and Venus and the moon? Now, something else that's going on for your ruler in this week ahead is this. It's in a sextile to the sun all week. Now, the sun is naturally in its own sign. It's in the sign of Leo. So the sun is absolutely in its right place. You are in, with this lovely sextile to your ruler, it's giving you this natural ability to shine right now. So even if there are these tough squares going on that are maybe holding you in a particular place, the sun is still there, really encouraging you on. It's really saying, look, I see you've got all this energy. I see you've got all these ideas. I see there's a lot going on for you, and I'm here to help you shine. So whatever is going on, please don't feel like there's not the opportunity to be seen. Please don't feel like there's not the opportunity to be felt and understood at some way. You have a much bigger reach than you realize. If only you knew just how much reach you have. Now, of course, in this week ahead, the moon phase is getting bigger. It's in a waxing gibbous phase. It's absolutely creative. It's another energy that is propelling us to do things. So with your natural exuberance in this week ahead, this moon phase is perfect for that. It's absolutely helping you to bring up your biggest ideas and help to manifest them. Now, where the moon is in the sign of Scorpio, it's quite intense. So I would say the start of the week is likely to feel really quite intense, possibly a bit moody. You may well notice that with the energy, you're maybe turning it a bit internally. Maybe you're also thinking about like how much more you should have already achieved. So the first couple of days, I would say, really don't be down on yourself. If you can boost yourself up a little bit and not be so resentful of yourself or resentful of others that are involved in the situation you find yourself in right now. To me, it feels like it's really important to recognize that, where there's an emotional trigger, it's most likely where you're holding an unrealistic expectation over yourself, or you're holding somebody else's unrealistic expectation over yourself. So, go easy on yourself when it's in the sign of Scorpio. I mean, it's another Mars-based sign, isn't it? So it's likely to bring up a lot of intensity. But I do think the freedom really begins And this is when you're really hitting the high of the energy. And that's when the moon goes into the sign of Sagittarius, a fellow fire sign. It's adventurous, it's a bit more flippant, it's quite optimistic, it has really high visions and values. Now, one thing I will say is the moon is going to be in opposition to Mars, so it is likely to fire you up. If there is an emotional situation that's going on, you may well find that this moon is the thing that kind of bursts the situation or bursts the bubble a little bit. All of a sudden you have enough, you get to that limit, and it's like, right, I'm done with this and I'm ready to do this. So I see that this is a clear decision point. What I would absolutely recommend to you is that you take the time. So you might make the internal decision. You might say, okay, right, I am ready. I know I need to make a big decision here, but maybe don't make it fully until you've had chance, maybe until the sun has come through into the sign of Capricorn. The reason I say that is, when the moon is in the sign of Sagittarius, you quite rightly have the idea that you want to go right off over here, like in this direction, to be able to solve things. But actually, I think you should stick around, like feel into your decision, know what it means to you, but don't announce it just yet, because there might be some damage control that you need to do between the 15th and the 17th. I'm not saying that you have damaged anything, but when the moon comes here, you're a lot more strategic, you're a lot more savvy, you're really thinking things through from the perspective of what the consequences of your decision might be. What consequences would that have for anyone that you're responsible for or to? How would that impact your reputation? So just make your decision, but sit with it. Just like give yourself a little bit of time. That way, if you change your decision, you don't have to backtrack or anything like that. Because let's face it, your Mars is absolutely energized with Jupiter at the moment, and also with the sun. You don't want to have to backtrack during this time when actually your energies are pretty high. So just manage yourself, find a way to manage yourself through it. Now, as the moon comes in to Aquarius, this looks like a time, it's a bit of a roller coaster, leading into the weekend, just the energies full stop. But, maybe think about spending it with friends who are the most likely to respect your need for freedom, respect your need for new ideas. Like spend time with the people who are your most innovative buddies. Spend time with the people that energize you with ideas and plans and big stuff, because that's the energy field that you're going to be in by the end of the week. So let's just pay a bit of attention to these big things that are occurring as well. So yeah, the Grand Cross is definitely playing out. It's definitely there to create some tension, and from that tension, I do think your biggest ideas and plans for your life will come forward. So I think it's beneficial. To me, it feels like if you're happy to be of service in some way, with Venus in Virgo, it's really emphasizing what you're prepared to do to be of service, but also what doesn't feel so good. You don't want to do service for others if it's going to feel good, or if it's not going to feel good, if it's going to take you down a wrong path. Your Venus here in the sign of Virgo in this week ahead is really encouraging you to help others, but only when it's not to your detriment, which is a great idea anyway. But the energy of Virgo can be it can be really pushed out and undervalued sometimes. So I do think it's important to hold your ideas and ideals, be service to others, but only as far as it suits you. Absolutely do not harm yourself in the process, because Saturn coming through the 12th can also, it also wants to be of service. There's these two, Saturn, which is all about service and all about responsibility, and Venus in opposition. They are really vying, kind of pulling you back and forth, almost out of the decision that you need to make right now. It almost feels like you're clearly wanting to share something. You're clearly wanting to get involved in something. It feels like there's a lot of learning going on. It feels like there's an expansion of your visions and values. And yet, how can you do that when it feels like, can I still help out in the way that I want to? And what does that mean for my energy levels? And what does that mean for my mental health? I suspect you've got fresh memories of where you've got involved in things and and help people through, I don't know, the goodness of your heart, but you've been pulled into some kind of energetic quagmire. So what I would say this looks like to me is you need to protect your energy somehow. You need to make decisions that are going to honor your contributions, that are going to honor your energy, your force, your vitality. I mean, you are really pure in your energetic field. So allow yourself to make the right decision that honors you. I think that's the big thing. And let's face it, Jupiter and the sun are there to celebrate your energy. Now, the last thing, and this is right at the end of the week, we've got this Mercury square Uranus thing coming on. I do think, Mercury at the end of the week is retrograde. He's really encouraging you to get very clear on your passions and to follow through on your passions. And Uranus is maybe giving you the desire to do something a bit unusual in terms of your work, in terms of how you might earn money. So maybe you honoring yourself is also putting a price on yourself, which might be a bit shocking. It might feel a little bit weird. You might make a big price cut or a big price rise, but there is something that you're doing in terms of how your value is perceived, and also how it relates to your overall creativity and passion for life. My last thought for you is, do not underestimate yourself. This is massively a week about self-care and honoring yourself. So if you can keep that in mind, honor myself. And when you make a decision, just hold on to it for a couple of days, just to make sure it's the right one for you. But yeah, have a great week. I hope that's helpful. And if I can be of any help, just get in touch, but go easy and honor yourself. Don't forget that. Lots of love. Hey, Taurus. So let's have a look at your forecast for this week ahead. I'm going to start here. I'm looking at this in 3 different ways. So the first one is I'm looking at your ruling planet, Venus. I'm also then going to be looking at the waxing phase. The moon phase, it's in a waxing gibbous phase at the moment. So it's in a growth phase. It's all very sort of exciting in terms of manifestation and preparing things to manifest. So I'll be looking through that. And then also the biggest aspects of this week ahead for you to be aware of in terms of how you might want to play with your energy in this week ahead. So first thing I want to focus on is Venus. So Venus is your ruling planet. Whether you're looking at this from your ascendant, obviously Venus would be your ruling planet. If your sun is in the sign of Taurus, it would be ruled by Venus. Your sun would have a Venusian kind of feel for it. And similarly with the moon, your moon is a sort of Venus-based moon in the sign of Taurus. So we'll start with Venus. Venus is moving from 8 to 15 degrees in this week ahead in the sign of Virgo. So, she's in a place right now where she wants to be of service. Venus is very sensuous. She's very much connecting. She's very much in flow. She really feels for everyone. And she really wants things to go easily and smoothly and gracefully. Wherever Venus is showing up, she's showing where there's a moment of grace, where there is a moment for things to go well, where there's a moment to feel gentle, kind, good, sweet. It's a place, it's a planet that brings goodness back, and when she's doing really well, it's a bit like that nursery rhyme. When she's good, she was very, very good. And when she was bad, she was horrid. Venus, when she's badly afflicted, can get really quite stroppy and really quite possessive and really, I would say, slightly on the neurotic side. Venus, when she's badly affected, starts to get really quite insecure about herself. Now, she's in the sign of Virgo in this week ahead. Like right now, she's in Virgo, and in the sign of Virgo, she starts to put herself into service. The sign of Virgo has a really strong service to others kind of energy. She really wants to help. She wants to be useful. She wants everything to be fit for purpose. And so, her energy is really sorting things out in a way that's beneficial, in a way that's pleasing. So she's bringing, I think, some aesthetics back to your everyday life in the way you live your life. Now, this is also kind of emphasizing the things you're passionate about, the things that you really like doing. And that can include intimacy. That can include spending time with your absolute nearest and dearest, your children. She is absolutely bringing an element of organization, and selflessness to the team. You know, she's bringing this energy up into your consciousness so that you can feel a bit cleaner in the way that you are being passionate about life and feeling joy. I mean, typically Venus going through this part of your chart is a place for joy and to express joy. And so I guess she's getting back to business. You know, she wants to get on with the process of feeling joy. Now, it just so happens that she is absolutely connected into the mother of all grand crosses. She's in opposition to Saturn. And I think Venus can bring up a bit of loneliness, a bit of, you know, Venus isn't very comfortable in opposition to Saturn. I've actually got this aspect in my actual birth chart. You know, it shows moments of not quite trusting yourself, moments of not feeling good enough. You know, Venus in opposition to Saturn is really not good enough, you know, sort of really trying hard, you know, trying to win the affections of older people or authority. You know, it's just not feeling worthy enough. So there's a lot going on there. And, you know, she may well be working her butt off to be of service because she doesn't feel worthwhile. So that's something to really watch for in this week ahead, is that you're not sort of putting yourself down. You're not doing yourself down. You're not overdoing things for affection or overdoing things so that you feel better about yourself. A better place to start would be to recognize that you're not feeling that secure and to ask your inner Venus why. You know, sit with yourself and see what your body is coming up with, see what that little voice in your head, maybe your higher self, you know, or ask people, why do you think I'm not valuing myself in the correct way? You know, these are all really valid things to consider, given that, you know, you're ruling, like Venus, who is so important to you, is in opposition to Saturn. Now, I'm just going to hop over to the moon phase and then finish off with the biggest aspects. So in terms of the moon phase, the moon starts off in the sign of Scorpio, which I think brings a really strong and intense feel for the way you're doing stuff. So I do think in the first day and a half of this week ahead, there's this really strong intensity. And you might also find that the people around you are really intense, almost insane, possibly jealous and possessive. It almost feels like the people around you, the people that you love, just feel a little bit too tight and a little bit clinging. And you might be thinking, crikey, I hope this week gets better. You know, I don't feel like I've got room to breathe, you know. So, you know, as that changes, as the moon goes into the sign of Sagittarius between the 13th and the 15th, I think what you're realizing is the closeness that people around you are demanding or expecting from you is starting to feel a bit heavy. And you might be starting to backchat a little bit about it, you know, starting to ask questions as to why there is so much heaviness or why there is so much expectation on you. Now, during, you know, the 13th to 15th, the energies are going to get quite frayed, because on the 14th, that's our really big energy day. And if you're not aware of that, I would check out part 1. But on this particular day, you know, the moon is in opposition to Mars and Jupiter in a conjunction. It's exactly in a square to Saturn. That's a really, really strong day, and a day when people are likely to, from your perspective, a day when people are likely to really let off steam in possibly the cruelest or possibly the most unkind way. So it's a real importance, I think, to really watch how you're feeling between the 13th and the 15th. Really pay attention to any growly feelings that you've got, any feelings, you know, sometimes, I mean, because we're all human, we all do it, you know, sometimes we have a nasty thought flash in our head, and, you know, we're lucky enough to not repeat what we want. You know how some people drunk text and things like that, you know, when they forget who they are or where they are, they say what they really, really feel. I think that's something that's a real possibility between the 13th and the 15th. Moreover, because Mercury is in a square to Uranus pretty much all week, and so people are much more likely to be shocking in the things that they're saying. Also, because Mercury's retrograde, people are starting to go back to things that they'd left behind. Given the position of the moon on these days and how important this grand square is, I would absolutely urge you to A, stay away from anyone that you think is going to get personal, but B, where you are having thoughts that are really personal about people, just get some calm time, take some time out, write it down, journal it down. Get it out, but I don't think it's the right time to share it. I really do think it's worth waiting a couple of days, because from the 15th to the 17th, when the moon goes into the sign of Capricorn, all of a sudden there's a more sane and level head going on. You know, it feels like there's a grown up in the room and you can start to trust yourself again. It's almost like this period here between the 13th and the 15th, we're running away with ourselves somewhat, and almost not caring about the consequences. But of course, if you do sound off, you will definitely feel the consequences as the moon goes into the sign of Capricorn, because the moon in Capricorn can be exacting. What would be really good is, between the 15th and 17th, as the tension of this big square starts to dissipate, what would be great if you could is if you could enjoy the potential of the moon in Capricorn, which for you is actually to have an adventure. It's to be practical, but to take practical action that gives you that sense of freedom, that sense of perspective, that sense of possibility. Grounded possibility is what I would say. And it's going to be really hard to do that if you're looking over your shoulder thinking, crikey, what did I say when I was drunk? So watch out for those sort of energies. And then by the time we come to the end of this week, the moon is ending on a really, really sensitive spot in a conjunction with Pluto. I do think late Saturday into Sunday, our feelings get super intense. In fact, Saturday feels a bit like a roller coaster, emotional roller coaster, where there's a lot of different things happening in that particular day. But on the Sunday, when the moon makes a conjunction with Pluto, things are absolutely felt intensely. So program yourself for a positive end to next week. Really consider the things that you've left unsaid that are bugging you, and try and find ways to dissipate or to relieve the pressure and tension behind those feelings. So if I just touch on the biggest aspects and then I'll round this up for you. So I did mention already the Mercury square to Uranus, which is happening at the end of the week. That's why I think you should absolutely relieve as much as you can, because Pluto in a conjunction with the moon is deep and intense. And it's in the sign of Aquarius, which is also ruled by Uranus, and Uranus is here in this tough old square with Mercury, absolutely wanting us to say, and another thing, I forgot to say this, and another thing. So you want to watch out for that. There can be some really big shock revelations coming out, so especially from things like social, what's it called? Social media. I suspect there's a lot going on there. Now this big square, the Grand Cross, and I have spoken about this in another release that I've released this weekend, especially about Grand Crosses. There's a bit about this particular one and the next one that's happening in September. We've got Mars and Jupiter in a conjunction in this week, and this is massive. It's a real sort of explosive energy, and where it's fitting in your chart is going to bring up a lot of energy in terms of how you prove your worth, and also some of the schemes that you might have to bring in more profit for yourself, to bring in more value, to prove your value to yourself. You might have so much of, I don't want to say a greed, but an excitement to earn money, an excitement to prove just how maybe profitable you are or valuable you are. I think you could get really, really busy with things, but as the moon is coming into the opposition on the 14th, this is a massive distractor. It's almost like the more you're working to show how great you are and to build on your self-esteem, the more there is this anti-energy, like someone's putting expectations on you almost to show that you're not the boss of you. So I do think there's a bit of a sort of tussle, almost like the more you put your energies into bringing yourself up, it feels like somebody is there to raise you down. So it's really important to try and find that balance point. It might be that you need to do your projects, the things that you're doing to raise yourself up. You might choose to do them in private rather than sharing them with people who have expectations on you. You know, they might be feeling very sensitive around this very, very sensitive time and feel threatened by, you know, the power that you're working with right now. You know, Saturn here in the 11th house, is it supposedly in the area of friendship, you know, in the area of networks and friends. Now, he can be very helpful and could also be a very helpful mentor. But, you know, in his opposition to Venus, he's actually quite stingy with his affection. So you can't even necessarily relate to your mentors or necessarily to the people you're intimate with. You know, from my perspective, as I'm looking at your chart for this week ahead, I really think this is a time to keep your own counsel in this next week. You know, use this really strong focusing energy, use the phase of the waxing gibbous moon, which is about growing your opportunities, and get on with it, but get on with it in private. Almost don't let people in. You know, right now, the people around you are super sensitive and very, very volatile. So, you know, do it on your own for a bit. Get the feeling of it. Build yourself up. Don't rely on other people to build you up or even be of the same mindset. You know, in a week's time or 2 weeks' time, hopefully you'll have some results that you can allow them to be revealed. But right now, I just think it's more important for you to keep your own counsel, allow yourself to build your natural self-esteem and just take it from there. Okay. There will be a time when it's easier to shine, but right now you need to shine for yourself. So I hope that's helpful, Taurus. Lots of love to you. Have a fantastic week ahead. So on to Gemini. How are you doing, Gemini? So this is for you if you've got a Gemini rising, if you've got a Gemini sun or Gemini moon. Now, the sign of Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Mercury, you know, has a flavor, you know, whether it's your Gemini moon, there is a sort of mercurial energy to it. If you are born with the sun in Gemini, you will have a bit of a mercurial expression of your sun, and so on and so forth in terms of your ascendant. If your ascendant's in the sign of Gemini, Gemini's like Mercury is totally your ruler. So Mercury is an important planet in this week ahead. And right now, Mercury's retrograde. And so in this week ahead, I really want to focus on, you know, your ruling planet first, because Mercury is in a situation, is in a planetary lineup known as a yod. Now, if you want to know more about this, then please do go and have a look at my yod video, which I released this weekend. And in the last 10-15 minutes, I talk about the yod that is forming right now and how it might affect world energies and in particular impact you. Suffice to say, the yod energy, which is also known as a finger of God or a finger of fate, it's pointing towards Mercury retrograde. It's really showing that in the course of this week, it starts here, it ends here, because Mercury, by the way, is moving from 2 degrees in the sign of Virgo to 27 degrees in the sign of Leo over the course of the week. You know, he's actually changing signs this week, albeit backwards. But the energy is really pointing here, really saying that right now, you, but also humanity, are really starting to think about themselves in a new way. It feels like we've become aware and rational about there's changes going on in the world. And now it's starting to apply, like, how does our story fit in with the current narrative? How does it balance out with the energy of Neptune, and how does it work with the energy of Pluto? Again, I really do urge you to have a look at the yod video. But this particular position of Mercury is also going to be forming a square with Mercury right at the end of the week. To be honest, at the beginning of the week, it's already, you know, moving into this square. You know, it's already in that sort of square position, but it just gets tighter and tighter and tighter until the 18th, at the end of the week, when it becomes exact. And so it's almost like this Mercury retrograde energy is building. What does this mean for you? Well, it's kind of happening between your 4th and the 3rd house, you know, the energies of which is very much about the home and that sense of belonging that you have at home, and, you know, what your life is based on, the behaviors that have come from, you know, your childhood and what you've known to be secure. And it's almost like you're working it back to your local community and the context that you grew up in. To me, it feels like you're having an awareness or an awakening that the knowledge that you've grown up with in life is actually proving maybe faulty or false, or inadequate. You know, whatever you've been preparing for, now is there's this feeling that your life isn't quite as stable in terms of what you know. You know, it's almost like there is a gap. You know, like I'm really thinking of it like a boat. If you imagine a boat, you know, you can't have a hole, you can't have a leak. You've obviously got to fill in all the gaps. And yet, as you're going through this week, it almost feels like there's a gap in your knowledge or a gap in your security based on what you have trusted to be true, but now you're not so sure if it is, and you're needing to fill in the gaps for yourself. So to me, there's a lot going on with this. And, you know, the Yod energy, the retrograde energy, and this great big blooming square to Uranus is huge. So this is likely to be an ongoing theme throughout the whole week. My attentions now are turning towards the moon, which at the start of the week is in the sign of Scorpio. You know, and this is a great time actually to just knuckle down and get some work done. Trust me, you know, between the 13th and the 15th, things get quite tense, you know, for everyone actually, not just you, but I actually think if you can get a couple of days work done or get on with life and not pay too much attention to everything else, that will actually help you. That will set you up so that you're feeling a lot more confident come Wednesday, Thursday, when things really start to take shape and almost lift off. Now, where it's lifting off to, who knows? But you know, this is about, I mean, this is a really epic week, Gemini, massive. So get on with the things you need to get on with, get organized, and you might choose to organize your finances a bit more, get really clear. Like the sign of Scorpio, the moon in Scorpio is really intense, but you know, you're no slouch when it comes to looking into your process of how you organize your life. You know, you're actually quite rational at times. So use a rational intensity to organize your life, reorganize it. You know, maybe look under the bed, look in the closet, like look into the places that maybe haven't had much attention. The sense of clearance that you can come up with at this time will be really, really helpful and really, really useful. So the 13th to the 15th, when the moon is in Sagittarius, this is a time, I think, when the people around you are noticeably fractious and argumentative, and you know, talking about truth this and truth that and philosophy, and you know, they're almost arrogant. You know, it just seems like a lot of people around you are bristling with this complete arrogance, which is really, really annoying for you, you know, and it's really playing into the opposition that's taking place in your sign. So obviously, I'm pretty sure you know that you've already got Jupiter going through your sign, and Mars is making a conjunction with him. Now, Mars hasn't made a conjunction here since 1942 at this particular degree. And then the previous one in Gemini, not at this degree, was in 1989. So it's not a common event for these two to come together in this place. But this place where they're coming together is really giving this sort of manifestation energy of whatever you set your sights on, you can really achieve if you really, really do it. But you are feeling super confident. You know, it is bringing up a level of intense need to work quickly, this intense need to expand. It almost feels like you're a conquering nation. You know, I'm not suggesting you are, but it feels like you're on a mission to do something. You're on a mission to stamp something and kind of put your energy out there. You know, it's really, really strong. And so I think this is the thing that's getting people maybe in an oppositional perspective. You know, it feels like people are either reacting to your level of confidence right now as it appears to them, and so they're trying to kind of shut you down a little bit. But it seems like quite a strong dynamic. I mean, what would be really great is if you could actually work together. But this Grand Cross is bringing up all sorts of tensions. Now, I want to talk about the other tensions. I will get back to the rest of the moon in a minute. But, you know, on the 14th, you know, like leading up to the 14th, Venus is getting into place. And is that right? Yeah. Hang on. Oh, yeah. Venus is coming into place and Saturn has been here for a long time. This is Saturn. This is Gemini. But Venus and Gemini in opposition can bring up this feeling that you don't have enough, and often that you feel a bit lonely or a bit shy. You're not quite so forthright about what you think you deserve, and that you have enough. Now, Venus ordinarily in the fourth, or this area of your chart, is bringing up good feelings at home, you know, and it's bringing up this feeling of wanting to be at home and wanting to feel quite secure, wanting to enjoy the spoils of your life. Saturn up here actually is in a great relationship, you know, to where he likes to be. Saturn usually in this position is highlighting that you're at the top of your game. You know, you're quite organized, you're an authority in your own right, you've got a lot of responsibility. It brings up a lot, but it also brings a lot of strong people, authoritative people into your sphere. You know, it's almost like as you become an authority in your own right, other authorities start to come in, and quite possibly they can inspire you. But if you're not in the right mind frame, which who is in this week ahead, you may well feel a little bit squashed by other people's authority, which also then plays into the opposition between Venus and Saturn that often brings up a feeling of not good enough and I'm feeling a bit lonely. So there's this very strong T-square going on, you know, in the 1st, 4th, 7th and 10th areas of your chart, which are really these primary areas. So, you know, the 14th is super stressy. Now, the way to really face this is to really get to the core of who you are and what you're hoping to achieve. It feels like you're being pulled in 4 different directions, and by no means you have to do that. You know, if you can somehow get into the center and consider, who am I at my core? What is the most important right now? Which direction am I moving in? Am I moving towards my career? Am I veering more towards my home? Am I focusing on my relationships, or am I coming back to me? You know, if you can find some kind of peace between all these balance points, that's perfect. If not, I would always veer that you come back into yourself, especially with this really strong Mars Jupiter energy, because it's giving you the opportunity to do something quite phenomenal. Now, as the moon progresses from the 15th to the 17th, it's going through the sign of Capricorn, which is a cooling off period. It's a moment in time where things might slow down a bit, and some of the naming, shaming, blaming kind of energy that you might have been used to just a couple of days before, that seems to dissipate, and all of a sudden everyone's a bit quiet, a little bit edgy. But that's a good time to just go on your own and do your own thing and take a bit of time away from things. Then as you're coming into the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, it feels like everyone's on this sort of emotional roller coaster leading into the big old Mercury Square, Uranus Square, and also leading to the moon making a conjunction with Pluto. Again, whatever you're doing from the 15th to the 17th, if you're kind of going into your own space, attending to your own things, I think that can naturally lead into the rest of the week. So if I was in your shoes, I think, Gemini, I would actually plan to take off from Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, have a long weekend, do something peaceful, do something reflective, do something that helps you tap into this area here, which always represents freedom for you, truth, the natural ability to see a much bigger picture. It's almost like you have to step outside of your life to be able to look back in and see how it's playing. So I hope that's helpful for you, Gemini. Have a phenomenal week ahead and catch you next week. Bye for now. So let's have a look at your week ahead, Cancer. Now, I'm looking at this from the perspective of you as a Cancerian, you know, with your ascendant, or you as a Cancerian sun, or you as a Cancerian moon. Feel free to check out all the different signs that relate to your moon, sun, and rising sign or ascendant. Now, the first thing I really want to talk about is your ruling planet, or the ruler of the Cancer energy, which is absolutely the moon. You know, the moon phase in this week ahead is in a waxing gibbous phase. You know, it's absolutely growing. It's developing your ideas, really bringing in this energy of manifestation, really bringing in this energy of anything is possible, and maybe putting in a little bit of extra time so that you can just work that a little bit harder, because you can actually see that this manifestation is coming. Now, you know, that's the idea of it. I can also see that in this week ahead, the moon is absolutely lining up into a very personal and difficult aspect around the 14th, when there's this grand cross taking place, and it's taking place in a way that is challenging your beliefs about life, challenging your ideas about what it is to have a healthy mind and a healthy body. And it's almost playing games with these ideas of how much freedom you need to be yourself and how much you need to conform. So there's a lot of ideas playing out around that time that are likely to pull you in very, very different directions. So much so that it's likely to bring up a lot of emotions, because obviously, being very much ruled by the moon or having a strong moon influence, the position of the moon, and when the moon has particularly strong energies, it's gonna bring up a lot. Now, as the moon goes through all these signs from Scorpio right the way through to Aquarius, the final conjunction it's making during this time, or the biggest aspect it's making during this time, is a conjunction to Pluto, which is no mean feat. It's a very, very intense time. So yeah, I think this is quite an intense week for you. And as we go into the beginning of next week with the full moon, that's also just going to kind of tip it off. It's really on the rise up to this full moon. So I do think you're probably feeling full moony. I'm sure you're used to this feeling because your emotions are actually tied into all these phases. So let me talk through this. So yeah, at the start of the week, the moon in the sign of Scorpio is likely to bring up a real need to feel connected to the things that bring you joy and the things that bring you love and intimacy. It's likely to bring up possibly a feeling of worry. Like, are you connected enough? Are you experiencing enough? Is it feeling intense enough? Is it not? If it's not, is it because there's something wrong? Probably not. I think a lot of people are quite distracted right now, but I think you are needing the intensity to feel very reassured. And if it doesn't feel in the right kind of intensity, it would be very easy to make a meaning that may not be true. So check your assumptions earlier on. In the first couple of days, there's this interesting and lovely trine between the moon and Saturn, which could actually help you feel really adult and feel like you're coaching yourself. Where you're feeling the lack of intimacy or the lack of intensity, the intensity that you actually desire. I think it is important to have a word with yourself and recognize that the need for intensity is possibly so that you don't have to look at your life closely and see if it is on track. It's a very sort of vulnerable shift, isn't it, to really look at things and face things and to consider whether it's right or wrong for you. So I think the start of this is quite helpful. You will be able to be responsible about your emotions, but it also opens you up and makes you feel vulnerable. As we're coming into the 13th, 14th, 15th, where the moon, your ruling planet, is in the sign of Sagittarius, it's coming into this real sort of fever pitch energy of this grand square. The moon in Sagittarius is probably the sign of the zodiac that's more likely to do unruly hand gestures and swear and be very nonchalant and slightly rebellious at times. The moon in Sagittarius wants to feel really free, wants to feel like it's able to just do what it wants to do, have the freedom, not have anyone judge it. The moon in Sagittarius will seek to avoid discomfort, really without much they won't try and hide it particularly, but as the moon goes through this area of your chart, and this area of your chart is about your responsibilities and about how you manage your life, you might find that you're actually really quite stressed about trying to balance it all, trying to make it all work, in particular around your health. I think the more stressed out you are, the more you really need to chill out, because your health is most likely the thing that is going to manifest any dis-ease first. I don't know how it manifests for you exactly, obviously, because I'm not looking at your direct chart. But if your emotions aren't right during this time, it's likely to, whatever is the weakest thing, whether it's your stomach, whether it's your head, it's that feeling of something's not quite right. How is your body communicating to you? It is going to be really communicating to you. It's going to let you know. So do ease off as much as possible. Don't give yourself a hard time. If you can face your life, which I'm hoping you can, if you can face the things that you're responsible for, face the things that you need to be grown up about without kind of sticking your middle finger up to your life, then you'll be okay. But if you're getting a bit rebellious about what is, if you're fighting the reality of your life, you're going to come off worse. This isn't a time to be rebellious necessarily. This is a time to just say, okay, it is what it is. It might not be what I want right now. However, I'm facing what it is. I can see, I can write a list. I can consider it. I can look it in the eye. I can look my life in the eye and say, this is out of kilter. The important thing is not to run away or avoid it, because if you're running away and avoiding it, which the, moon in Sagittarius energy brings out in you, when will you face it? This is a pretty big dynamic, and this big square could actually help you resolve why you avoid the difficulty of getting your life like watertight. It could actually help you find the missing key that you've needed to know about. As the moon moves into the sign of Capricorn, it feels that around the 15th and 17th, it just feels that there's a bit of sanity. It feels like some of the people around you are a bit more grounding. Maybe you've had a bit too much time on your own at the beginning of the week, and from the 15th to the 17th, you're really needing to ground with the people that you trust, the people who are reliable, and they might also be the people who at times you might feel a little bit slighted by, because they don't always get into the emotional drama that you do. However, be around the grounded people as much as you can. You can learn a lot from them in this particular little slice of moon life. As we're coming to the end of the week, I think people are a bit tired. There's an emotional roller coaster going on with the moon's positions and how the moon is relating to other planets. And as the moon gets into a conjunction with Pluto, I think it's a time to really watch your words. There's a bit of blame being thrown out there. I think people are throwing what they can to see what sticks, and you don't need to be in the way. If somebody says something that feels really unfair, ask, who does this belong to, and sidestep. You don't have to do it. Like, do your sort of Neo Matrix thing, where you avoid the the Matrix bullets. You don't have to take something that's not yours. Now, talking about this, I just want to finish on these two aspects. So I've spoken a bit about the moon and what it's representing within this ground cross, but I haven't really spoken about the other aspects of it. So you do have Saturn and Venus in an opposition together, which can sometimes make you feel separate, especially Saturn is really kind of urging you to take a much bigger view of life and urging you to get quite serious about politics and get quite serious about religion and different kinds of philosophy, spirituality. And you might feel this overwhelming pressure to learn more and try and find out as much as you can. And yet it's almost destroying the enjoyment and love and sharing that you can have in your local community. So it almost feels like whatever is going on for you, what's going on in the outer world could be a really good distraction that the Sagittarius moon is hoping will be the thing that you can avoid facing your life with. However, if you follow your desire to jump into what's going on in the world, all that's going to do is you're going to end up delaying and rain checking the things you actually need to attend to right now. Attend to yourself first. The world will wait. It's not going to go on without you. So attend to yourself first. And similarly, you might feel like your community or your friends, the people around you, are wanting to be near you. I mean, you've got a lovely character. They probably want a bit of reassurance too, to be fair. And you would probably like that feeling too. But again, when you're going into your social connections and feeling at home, that kind of energy, it's also taking you out from what you really need to attend to right now. And the last one, Mars and Jupiter in the 12th house, it's absolutely showing you, I mean, this is really big. It's absolutely showing you your blind spots. It's illustrating what you're not prepared to look at. And it's also illustrating what could make you ill if you don't attend to it. So, it might feel like you're being pulled in all these directions, but it really is for your good. I really do strongly think that, because it's showing you where you're not prepared and where you're not able to face yourself. So as difficult as it might be, I really, really honestly just want you to know you can do this. You can look at those areas of your life where you might not feel very confident, maybe might not feel strong enough to look and face, but you absolutely can do it. And what's happening around the leading up to the 14th and then dying out after the 14th, it's giving you a reality check. It's showing you how you avoid and how you self-sabotage. And, I really hope this is the gift that really shows you a new way, so you get a new strategy. The last thing, at the end of the week, there's the Mercury Uranus Square. It's, it may be a bolt out of the blue from somebody, one of your friends, friends, somebody in a network, but it feels like there's a bolt out of the blue, a bit of inspiration that gives you a new sense of who you are, a new sense of value, a new sense of purpose. Maybe they're calling out for you in some way, and it gives you an idea about yourself. There is more knowledge about yourself. In fact, as you face yourself, you are absolutely learning who you are to a much deeper level. So what a week, eh? I hope that's helpful for you, Cancer. Sending you lots of love. Have a great week ahead and speak to you real soon. Bye for now. Moving on to Leo. So what are we looking at in this week ahead? Well, first of all, I just want to share with you that, this forecast is absolutely aimed at giving you a burst of insight to go through the week ahead. And you could be using it if you've got your Leo ascendant, if you've got your sun in the sign of Leo or your moon in the sign of Leo. The sign of Leo is associated with the sun. And, as such, I'm going to pay a bit more attention to the sun this week. And also, how the moon is playing out for you, and also some of the biggest aspects that are going on. So the first thing that I really want to talk about is the position of the sun in this week ahead. The sun and the sun's movements, they're in a great place for you right now. Astrology, like this time of year, is meant to help you shine. This is the time when you come into your own. This is the time when you start to feel a bit warmer, a bit more confident. And usually this is a time when you start to like yourself a bit more. I don't know why necessarily, what it is about you that feels more relaxed, but it just feels like you're in your own groove. And one of the things I really like about the sun's position this week is the sextile that the sun is in all week to Mars and Jupiter. Mars and Jupiter together, and where they're activated for you, Leo, they're really activating the energy of friends and networks and connections, and also the idea of shared global visions, like the visions you might share with people that you haven't met yet, but maybe you've been friends with on social media for years and years and years. But it's that feeling that you're not doing this on your own. And maybe that's why, the sun, is really great at this time of year, because you realize just how many lives you touch. And so that's probably where this really has to focus on. So this sextile to Mars is going to be bringing you a lot more energy, a lot more physical energy, a feeling of confidence socially, a feeling that you're not as bad as you thought you were. And then the sextile to Jupiter is absolutely magnifying the area, like the level of confidence, but adding a sense of hope, adding a sense of maybe a bit of personal pride. It's also, I think it's quite lucky. The sextiles are really quite, I think, busy little aspects. They're not necessarily achieving massive projects, but they're building bricks, and they're, building a pathway to something. They are the unsung heroes, I think, of astrology. And so this sextile from the sun to the Mars and Jupiter conjunction here is really building up your level of influence. It's really building up how many lives you reach and how many lives you spread your light, your love into. And I think this is also quite lucky. I think you'll find yourself in the right place at the right time, in just the right way. for just the right reason. You know, it just feels like things are fated in a beautiful way for you. So I really want that to be the overall feeling for this reading for the week ahead. Now I want to focus more on the moon phase. Now we're in a waxing moon phase right now. And what that means is that the moon is in the phase of growing and getting stronger and stronger. And so it's a time when we are growing our opportunities, where our ideas are gathering speed, where we're getting momentum, where we're feeling like there is a manifestation arriving. You know, it feels like there is something happening. During this time, we often feel like we're full of purpose. You know, we've got a clear direction and we're taking steps forward. So that's great. You know, and where this moon starts at the beginning of the week in the sign of Scorpio is really giving you a sense of, I don't want to say irritation, but intensity to get things right at home and get things moving, you know, at a behavioral level. I think anywhere where you are kind of hiding your light or being slow and lazy, I think you're going to be kicking your own butt. You know, I think you've got ants in your pants and you're really needing to move on. As we come to the 13th or 15th, and again, you know, the moon is getting bigger and bigger. It feels like things are speeding up. We've got this really big formation, a grand cross. And I have spoken about this in a different video that I released over the weekend called Grand Cross, you know, talking about the Grand Cross coming up in August and in September. But, you know, this is big, and the position of the moon in the sign of Sagittarius as this is going down is absolutely highlighting the levels of creativity needed right now to be you. It's really showing you, you know, with all the ideas that you're generating and the lives that you want to reach in your life, like the level of influence that you'd like. To me, it feels like this Grand Cross is showing you just how creative you need to be, but showing you that there is a bit of a dissonance between the creativity that comes from your contacts and the level of genius, the level of determination, the level of confidence that other people have in you versus how much confidence you should have in yourself. You know, with this moon over here, it's also connecting to Saturn in the 8th and Venus in the 2nd. Now, Venus in the 2nd is really helpful. Like Venus is, you know, where she is right now from your perspective is she's bringing you in a sense of a growing sense of value in yourself, a growing sense of recognizing the true gift that you are to the world. You know, so she's boosting you up right now. But, you know, Venus is never very comfortable in opposition to Saturn, and Saturn, you know, in the sign of Pisces, has really been kind of knocking your confidence a little bit. And so we've got this bit of a tussle between Venus and Saturn. You know, from the Saturn perspective, it's almost like you've got this voice in your head saying, you were never very good at that. Or, you know, your dad and I always knew you'd never amount to anything. It's almost like there's this negative voice or a negative kind of expectation that you're tuning into. And it's really important that you don't do that to yourself, you know, because who's in your head? It's not your mum. It's not your dad. It's not your first partner that it ended badly with. It's not your first friend. It's you. It's you that's in your head. And all these voices in your head might sound just like the people that you once knew or still know, but it's still you having those voices. And yes, you might be creating a really good impression of these people. And actually, you might be saying to yourself the things they actually are saying, but it's still not your business, really, what they're saying in private about you or what their views about you are. It's not your business. The only business that is yours is how you feel about yourself and how you are in the world and what a gift you are and how you're sharing your gift, as far as I'm concerned. And forgive me if I'm a little blunt with that, you know. So Saturn here is a challenge. You know, he is kind of a downer on your level of confidence and your ability to feel like you can leave the past behind and leave some of the family curses behind. But Venus is really working hard. So yeah, there's a lot going on. So with Saturn up here in a square to the moon on the 14th, you know, you might realize that you have a lot of creativity, but maybe not trust it enough. So, you know, the big challenge for you as the moon is in Sagittarius around the 13th and 15th is to go into the deep level of trust in yourself. Absolutely don't listen to naysayers. I mean, it's okay to take it as information, but don't take it to heart. Don't allow it into your heart, because again, it's you that's in charge here, not the voices in your head. You can do so much more than you realize. Now, as you are coming into the 15th and to 17th, as the moon comes into Capricorn, you're actually starting to pick up again and you're starting to feel a bit more industrious. You're starting to feel like you're a lot more capable, and maybe you were putting yourself down a little bit, and you're worth a lot more. So that's good. You come back to your senses. So again, around the 14th, it's not a day, I don't think, to commit to anything with any gusto. Wait a day. Whatever you're about to commit to, make sure it's not because you feel like you're not good enough, because you'll overcommit and cause yourself a problem. Give it a day or two, as the moon comes into Capricorn, and you can get a sense of perspective. That would be really helpful. At the end of the week, when the moon is in the sign of Aquarius, there is this kind of, it's like a roller coaster ride at the end of the weekend, like next weekend. It feels like everybody's a bit tense. It feels like something's brewing, and it could be really easy to get into the drama of where everyone else is. And I absolutely recommend that you don't. Use your observation skills to just observe what's going on. This is happening over here in the area of everyone else, not in the area of where you are. So again, in the same way that I've said, watch the voices in your head and watch what you're telling yourself, what other people are thinking, like you're mind reading, but then believing that you're mind reading accurately. You never know if you are or not. Again, when other people are seeming like they're distracted and that they're emotional and they're on this roller coaster ride, you don't have to go along there with them. You can observe it. You'll be in a much more powerful state as the moon connects with Pluto, if you can be calm and recognize the only thing you can control is you. Before I go, I just want to share, at the same time that, there's this emotional roller coaster ride for the people in your life, there is also Mercury in a square to Uranus. And it does appear that people are a bit snippy, to say the least. And, Mercury is just retrograded back into your sign, so, it feels like you need to consider yourself a bit more. You need to focus on like who you are, what you're about. And again, you can't do that if your mind is out here facing everyone else or imagining how other people are judging you. You absolutely have to just account to you or God and you, if you're particularly religious. But on this particular last day, be very wary of what people out there are doing and saying and putting out there as opinions. It would be really easy to be impacted by somebody's opinion. The thing is, we all have opinions, and right now we're in these times where people are letting them loose, like flying them out there like arrows, and they're not always for you. So be aware that you could find somebody's opinions inspiring. There might be an opinion or an idea that comes out that inspires you and helps you to develop something, for your life, for your career, for your reputation. You might have this beautiful download, but similarly, you might be shocked by somebody, like something that's revealed in the public sphere, maybe, in the news or like celebrities or whatever. You might hear something that absolutely shocks you, but ultimately, it is you that is driving your own bus. It's your bus, and it's up to you who you put on it as a passenger. And you don't have to have other people's ideas, reputations, opinions. It's you. It's your life. You're doing this. So there you go. If I can give you that idea, it's about you. It's all about you, Leo. That's the message for this week ahead. And I hope you have a great week. So catch you next week. And if I can be of any help, you know where to find me. Lots of love. Hey Virgo, let's have a look at your week ahead. Now, this is for you as an ascendant, or if you've got your sun in Virgo or your moon in Virgo. If you think about the energy of Virgo, it's ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is in such a strong and interesting place in this week ahead. Oh my goodness, that's where I'm going to start. So there's a few things I want to touch on. Mercury, the ruling planet, the moon phase and the signs of the zodiac that the moon's going into, but also these really big aspects, one of which has Mercury in. So where do I start? Well, the first place I want to start with is the position of the Yod that's happening between the 12th and the 17th of August. Now, you might be asking, what is a Yod? And if you want to know about it in great detail, I've released a video just this weekend all about Yods. It's Y-O-D, Yod. Oh, my Yod, I've called it. But a Yod, also known as a finger of fate or a finger of God, is a really unusual sort of planetary alignment that involves 3 planets, and they're pointing in the direction of the Yod planet. And this one is Mercury, and it's Mercury retrograde. During this Yod, Mercury starts at 2 degrees in the sign of Virgo, goes back to 27 degrees in the sign of Leo. It changes signs. It's really speaking a lot about the need right now to reassess what we've known about our lives and to put it into a new kind of context. It feels like we have got very, very rational, and we're now needing to dip into the rich culture of what it is to be yourself. You know, it is about individualism. It's about reimagining your own individualism and your own story. Now, it's interesting because what's feeding into this, and I do talk about this a lot in the Yod video in the last 12-15 minutes or so of it. That's where I really go to town in it. But it's really got a message for humanity. But the overall message is, I think, to do with where we sit in the world. Right now, there's a lot of messages about how we're moving into a new technological age, and also about the role of the human and how we're changing, you know, how humanity is changing. There is a whole new story being scripted right now for humanity, and it feels like it's being written and we're not necessarily consciously involved in that. And as I see this play out in this week ahead for you, it feels like, especially with this Mercury retrograde and the fact that we've got this Yod energy really working on this energy of the kind of outer consciousness, and it appears there is this new sort of rhythm to life, a new direction that life is going in. Right now in this week ahead, it's occurring to you, well, where do I fit in with this? Is this what I want? Is this how I want life to be? Do I feel like do I feel like I'm ready for a life where humanity's role is changing and the way the world is changing exponentially in a way that maybe I don't understand? Now, again, I think a lot of it depends which generation you're currently in, like which generation were you born into and what's your current age? Because, you know, I would imagine that the younger generations, and if you're a younger viewer, you're a lot more prepared than an older a different generation would be for this kind of change. But it does feel like there's quite a bit of turmoil right now in terms of the messaging about humans. And how you're translating this to you is, you know, where have I been for the last few years? It feels like, you know, life has really rattled on, and it's had its own rhythm. And a bit like if you were to roll a ball downhill, you know, it might start a little bit slow, but after a while it gathers speed. You know, like if you're freewheeling, if you're on a bicycle and you're freewheeling down a hill, all of a sudden it gets faster and faster and faster until it's almost like you're daring yourself to put the brakes on. And right now, I think in this week ahead, you are wanting to put the brakes on because you're wanting to see, where are you going on this journey right now? Like, what is coming up in your periphery? What's in your view? Have you got time to really think about it? Have you got time to observe it and see if you like it even? So to me, as I'm looking into this week ahead for you, I think it's with a lot of questions that you're going into this week ahead. At the end of the week, there is another aspect involving Mercury, and that is the exact square to Uranus. Now, in truth, that square is like valid the whole week, but it intensifies, and like you're turning the dial up, the volume up all week. It's getting like louder and louder and louder. And there is this feeling that there's a bit of shock from the world out there, not necessarily from your own world, from where you live, but it feels like stuff is happening out there. Now, where is out there for you? Is it the next town along? Is it in your country? Is it in your media? Is it, the other side of the world? It just feels like there's a big shock. And there's also a big curiosity. There's this desire to learn more about other people's perceptions and other ideas. It feels like it's a time to expand. and possibly a time to study again. So there are, with the shocks of maybe what life is presenting to you right now, there is also that curiosity and desire to kind of dive into some learning around your life and what else you need to know. So I think things are opening up for you. And the emphasis of this square, coming back to you, is that it's almost reprogramming the way you think about yourself. So quite a deep working week, I would say, all in all. Now I'd like to look at the moon phase, because this is a waxing gibbous moon phase. It's a growth period that we're in this week ahead, and it's gathering momentum, gathering speed. Again, a bit like the like freewheeling on a bike down a hill. It's getting faster and faster and faster, only you're not going down. The moon is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So the emotions are growing as we're going through this week, and also the potentials, the feeling of optimism, the feeling that actually something is growing, it's like you're gestating, something is getting bigger and bigger. Now, where this starts, this whole week starts in the intensity of, Scorpio. The moon in Scorpio is intense, really intense. Your feelings are absolutely driven by the people around you right now and the community that you're in your neighborhood, in terms of the expectations of your friends and family and stuff. It feels like there's a lot going on. And maybe it just feels a bit intense and that you want to just like sidestep it a little bit. And fair enough, because why would you want to get involved in other people's drama right now? There's enough going on right now. As you're going into the 13th to the 15th, this is when things really start to pick up speed. So with the bike freewheeling analogy, this is where the hill suddenly drops quite considerably. And it seems to go faster. And that's when you're reaching for your brakes, because on the 14th, there's this very, very, very strong dynamic. Now, this is the interesting bit, because this strong dynamic is going across the foremost important parts of life from the Virgo perspective. The Mars and Jupiter conjunction is highlighting your need to raise your profile. It's really highlighting your need and your confidence about your reputation, your career, how you stand in the world. It's really making a bigger possibility for yourself, which could be deeply, deeply energizing, and also set off a whole heap of other stuff going on, because as you're starting to radiate with a much stronger outer identity, other people will be reacting to that, because, the you that they have known feels different. Like the you that you know yourself to be is feeling different. This is a time when actually the efforts that you've put in the past are appearing to come into an alignment of gratitude, or an alignment of reward. It feels like you're being noticed, that the things that you've done have been really, really great. However, whilst you've got the spotlight on you, it's also worth bearing in mind that you want to keep your nose clean. You want to keep your powder dry. You really absolutely want to ensure that whilst the spotlight is on you, you are being noticed for doing the right things in the right way at the right time. Mars and Jupiter here is about bringing a sense of goodwill and determination, and it's giving you all the sort of energy and drive in the world to do what you need to do. Now, of course, when I started this talking about Mercury and what's going on in the world, you might be making a connection between your outer career, how you're seen in the big world, and the fact that it feels like maybe you've been on autopilot. And the reason why you are being noticed right now is because you've done all the right things, but not necessarily questioned how it was all lining up. And so it's interesting, isn't it, that at this time when you're being noticed for the things that you've wanted to be seen for, that you're now thinking, did I go in the right direction? Have I been going in the right direction all this time? Have I had the right focus? And so, I'm here to let you know that you can refocus. And this week can be a really, really strong week to refocus, but it might be a bit dramatic as you have this kind of realization, oh, maybe what I'm about to receive isn't actually what I've wanted. Maybe I've just, been drifting a little bit, So there's this very, very big, strong day on the 14th. And I think this is a day where it feels like there's pressures coming from all different directions, and possibly where we're feeling a bit pulled and torn in our directions, So like I said, there's this strong impulse to be quite ambitious and to be seen as successful and to take on lots of responsibility. And then at the same time, there is this real strong feeling of missing home, missing the sense of security that you might have, also getting emotional about it. If you are developing the out there, what's going to happen? What's going to keep you grounded? How are you going to stay grounded? Now, something else to focus on as well is the fact that it feels like the people in your life are also a bit of a buzzkill. No disrespect to them, because, we all have moments where our friends are lifting us up. And recently, in particular, right now in this week, it feels like your usual friends who stand by your side for the last couple of years, as Saturn has gone into the sign of Pisces, it has felt like the people in your life have got a bit more depressive, a little bit more serious, less gung-ho, less exciting. They're a little bit more staid. They're really a lot more grounded than usual, believe it or not, but it can have a bit of a dampening effect. And of course, as you've got Venus coming into your own sign this week, which is kind of raising your charisma and helping you to feel much better. And at the same time, whilst you're feeling better about yourself, whilst it feels like your career is about to, go off in a stronger direction, it feels like there are people at home and also people in your life that are either emotional at home and then kind of miserable or controlling in your life. So it's a strong one. No wonder you are thinking about the sort of expansion outside of your community and the expansion to learn and grow, because it feels like some of the people around you are, would like nothing better than to kind of squash you back into a box where they can understand you a bit better. But that's not what's going on at the moment. And it's definitely not what's going on in this week ahead. So, yeah, I do think around the 14th, as the moon goes into the sign of Sagittarius, or it already is in the sign of Sagittarius, this is a very, very strong dynamic. How do you cope with those feelings of you wanting to grow and be seen, whilst other people are wanting you to not be seen and wanting you very much in your own place? It is a time when you're going to need to really center yourself. Now, as the moon progresses in this week ahead, your energies are really strong. You are wanting to create a lot. And the moon is heading into Capricorn, which is really helpful because it's helping you to take practical action about the things that you're passionate about. It is giving you a nudge. It is saying, come on, don't let other people's attitude stop you. Don't let other people's sensitivity be more important to you than your own drive for passion and joy. And so I do think that between the 15th and 17th, you are able to get back on that horse and feel a little bit like you are moving again, and that the next step to take. Jupiter and Mars up here is going to give you a lot of insight and a lot of encouragement. As we head to the weekend of the 16th, 17th, there's a bit of a roller coaster ride in terms of the aspects that the moon's making. And then, we're ending the week with, the moon in a conjunction with Pluto, leading into the lead up to the full moon. So it does feel like the energies of other people are getting more and more intense, more and more, dare I say, insane. It does feel like people are really vying for your attention, and actually you'll probably just want to attend to your actual real life, and not your outer life, not your family, well, maybe your family life, not your friend life, but attend to the things that you need to. So I do think as you're coming to the end of the week, you're going to be really focusing on your own stuff and allowing other people to make their own decisions as to what they want to do. Your ruling planet is retrograde at the moment, and I don't think it's a good idea for you to make a hard and fast decision about what's going on. But suffice to say, this week ahead is giving you lots of food for thought, and it's bringing up these new ideas, and it's bringing up a sense that there is a new direction. Again, I wouldn't necessarily commit to a new direction, but like hold that idea as a possibility, see how it feels in a day, see how it feels in a week. And also I think it's really important to see what is going on in the world in this next 2 weeks, because I think there is a lot of change energy. And if the world is changing at the same time, you might find that your idea falls out of currency. It isn't current anymore. Maybe it's not as valuable. So yeah, it's not a time to make a hard and fast decision, but if you could organize your life almost so that you could go off in a few different directions, that would be really, really beneficial for you. Suffice to say, by the end of the month, as Mercury starts moving forwards again, and then after the 11th of September, by the way, when there's another grand square, but Mercury comes out the shadow, you will be feeling a lot more confident and a lot more certain. So it does feel like there's a lot going on, in particular in this week, but leading on to a whole month from now. But I hope this has been helpful in giving you some ideas for this week ahead, Virgo. And yeah, thanks for checking in, and catch you next week. Lots of love. Okay, so Libra, how are things looking for you this week? Well, this is an interesting one. I'm looking at this from the perspective of your ascendant, or if you've got the sun in Libra or the moon in Libra. I'm looking at this from the energy of Libra, irrespective of which one you've come in to this reading from. The energy of Libra is ruled by Venus. And so that's where I want to start this reading today. So what's happening in this week ahead? Well, Venus is in a very interesting position. And I think Venus likes to swan around a little bit and to feel quite special. The energy of Venus is about connection, flow, ease, grace. It is about beauty. Wherever Venus goes, it should be beneficial for you. It should be raising the game somewhat. Venus is one of these planets that things get easier with, but she's not that great when she's in a challenging energy. She doesn't feel quite so beneficial. In fact, she can get a bit petulant and feel a little bit picked on, definitely feel quite disconnected. And in this week ahead, Venus, your ruler here, is in opposition to Saturn, and she's really not comfortable in an opposition to Saturn. Trust me, I've got it in my birth chart. We can feel very disconnected from others and absolutely feel like lost, feel shy, feel not very confident, not very beautiful, not good enough. It really can weigh down on your self-confidence. So it's interesting also that Venus is in the, in the area of your blind spots, in a very, very intense and intuitive place in this week ahead. And beyond that, actually, she's going to be there for a little while. But in the opposition to Saturn, she's starting to doubt herself. She's starting to wonder if she's good enough, if she'll ever be good enough, and what she can possibly do to kind of let go of this curse. Well, I'm here to really sort of bring home the message that you can break this. And that actually what's really going on is that you're coming into yourself and really getting a clearer idea of who is in your mind, which programs are playing out. And Venus here actually can be quite compassionate. She can show you where you're not being loved to yourself right now. So that's the first thing I would ask yourself in this week ahead. Keep asking yourself, like if you have a weird thought, you might say, am I being loved right now? Am I loving myself right now? Because anywhere where you're not being loved to yourself, don't worry about everyone else for now. This is a pretty intense week where we're all kind of on our own, really, with Venus and the Saturn opposition. We are all kind of needing to resource for ourselves and not put ourselves on other people, not put pressure on, or not take on extra responsibility for other people. So, ask yourself, am I being loved to me? How am I being loved to me? That's really important. And see what comes up. You're very deeply intuitive in this week ahead. So keep asking these questions and notice what comes up. There will be some great answers, I'm sure, about it. Now, Saturn, interestingly, is kind of the way Saturn is working in this week ahead. In particular, like here's Venus, here's Saturn, and they're in this really tight a grand cross. And by the way, if you want to know about grand crosses, I've released a video about it over the weekend. And I do talk about this August Grand Cross in quite some detail. So there'll be a lot there, but how it relates to you, Saturn here is quite depleting in terms of your energy, like how much energy you have to run your life, organize your life, organize your health. And so I think it's kind of depleting. It almost feels like not only are you doubting your ability to cope, and your ability to change and your ability to work under pressure, but you're starting to feel like you're going to fall behind or feel like you haven't got the energy to actually stand up. Like I've said earlier, you can do this. I know you can do this. And I want to talk about some of the other pressures and how they can work out and how you can use them to realize a way forwards, because here's where a lot of the big energy is, not all of it, because Mercury's retrograde and in a super powerful Yod position as well, which I will briefly mention. But Mars is in a conjunction with Jupiter, and it's absolutely wanting to expand out of everything that's unusual, everything that is philosophical, political, that is expanding your mind. Maybe you're teaching, maybe you're learning. There's this, maybe you're traveling. To me, it feels like, the answer to whatever is going on in terms of how you're feeling about yourself, what you need to know, there's something out there outside of your usual life that really is holding the answers. And Mars and Jupiter are really giving you the confidence to say, you know what, all this Saturn energy here that is bogging me down. The reason why it's bogging me down is because actually I'm beyond this kind of mundane energy. I can do the mundane energy. Should it be where I put my attention? Probably not. There are bigger things for me. There are more important things for me. I can get somebody to help me with this. But right now, I can't get somebody to be me. I can't get somebody to be inspired. I can't get somebody else to do my learning for me. And so to me, the Mars and Jupiter conjunction is absolutely bringing this kind of furious need to learn things, this strong, confident desire and energy to leave everything that feels mundane, to leave everything that feels normal. There's a much bigger emphasis on things that are stimulating, unusual, the things that take you outside of the ordinary. And I think actually as you come out of the ordinary, you are by default lifted up. You're lifted into a new place. And actually it's the new place that you need right now. Now, during this week, I should also say the moon phase is in a waxing gibbous phase. So it's growing, it's manifesting, it's showing patterns faster and faster. And we're all playing with slightly higher emotions, it is absolutely so much easier to connect into our emotions because it's almost like they're right under our skin at the moment. The whole week starts with the Scorpio energy, and it is intense. For sure, it is intense, but it is there to prove to you actually just how much you're worth, how much you can value yourself, how other people value you a little bit, and also a lot about your resources. Your energy may well go to your resources. And I think if you can use the first couple of days of this week to get a handle on things, I think that would be really helpful, because between the 13th and the 15th, as the moon goes into the sign of Sagittarius, is absolutely triggering and setting off this very strong Grand Cross energy, and that is likely to surprise you. But the moon at that time is really coming into a place of your community, your early context, the context that the mindset. That's the word I'm looking for, actually. It's the mindset, the normal mindset. The moon is coming into this place of, where everything was when your mind, your programming was all set up. The moon is absolutely showing you the emotions of what happens when you follow your mindset. It's almost like drilled into you. You've got like these little channels, these neural pathways that always lead you to the same conclusion. Well, actually, what this great big grand cross is showing you is you need some different neural pathways. Isn't that interesting? And you've got the energy to A, recognize you need some new neural pathways. B, you've got the belief that you can do it. You really do. And C, you've got the energy to do it, the inspiration to do it. I also think there are people that will help you to do it as well. With Venus, in this very sort of private area, I do think it's possible to find support. I don't think you have to be on your own to do this. And the fact that Venus, which is such an important planet to you, is in this place of privacy and intuition and programming, to me is an indication that you really can change your neural pathways or change the way you're thinking. So if anything, I think the struggle that the struggling planetary picture that every one of us has got in this week ahead, I think for you, it's really at the mind energy. It's really, really managed by what's going on in your head. And if you can manage to get some mastery about that, you'll be really cooking on gas. You'll be miles away from everyone else. You'll be, absolutely raising your game, which I think is great. Last thing I want to share with you then, and that is that there is this Mercury square Uranus. Now, Uranus is showing, I think, surprise from other people in your life. It's showing you where beliefs that you've had about people are maybe revealing new bits of information. I do think this is a week ahead where we're getting a few shocks along the way, maybe about how other people believe their life to be or how other people believe you should be. There is an element of change coming in terms of whether you're prepared to take on board other people's blame, shame, guilt and anger and stuff that they put on you, or if you're ready for a break in the psychology. I really think if you're open to a new psychology, a new foundation for your mental health and your mental programming, I think, yes, you might notice there are some things that are shocking, but actually, I think every shock that you get is exactly what you need to recognize you're on your right path. Mercury retrograde is coming back into a place of helpful people. It's actually showing you that don't, throw everyone out, with this collective bathwater. Not everyone is necessarily rooting for weird psychology. Not everyone is working in a way that might be detrimental to you. You do have a lot more supporters than you realize. And so I think Mercury coming retrograde at the moment is there to show you who is good for you and who's not. So I hope that's helpful, Libra. Have a great week ahead. If I can be of any help, just get in touch. But yeah, hopefully catch you next week. Bye for now. Hey, Scorpio. So looking at the week ahead, it's quite a big week. It's one of the biggest weeks of the year, I think. I did think April was one of the biggest month. And yeah, it was the biggest month of, up until now. And now we're coming into a whole new phase. This is a week of really big transformations and ideas coming up. So where to start? I guess the place I want to start in is, you've got a couple of ruling planets. One is Mars, the other is Pluto. So I want to talk a little bit about what's going on for those. Now, Mars is pretty big. It's in a sextile to the sun all week. Mars is here. It's in a conjunction with Jupiter. That's the real big news. Mars in a conjunction with Jupiter happens every couple of years. It hasn't happened in the sign of Gemini for 35 years. It's pretty big. And it's really highlighting everything that you know about blame, shame, guilt and anger, everything that you know about your fears of death, your fears of intimacy, also your fears of owing money. It's really bringing up actually a lot to do with what's holding you back and giving you the necessary energy to break some of these familial curses or these feelings of it had to be this way. There are some belief systems I think that you've held on to for a long time, and Mars and Jupiter coming into here is firing you up with a new confidence to ask yourself the very important question, is this for me or not? And then to actually think something bigger and to move beyond that. I've got every confidence that you can do that. This whole week, Mars is in a lovely sextile to the sun. That's great. not only is it in this conjunction with Jupiter all week, which is absolutely bringing out a feeling of confidence, it's rising you up, it's lifting you up. It's also in a sextile to the sun, which is showing you that it is your time to shine. You're not meant to not be seen. You are meant to be seen. You're meant to be experienced. You're meant to be felt. You're meant to be taking your place right now. So, you can absolutely take some comfort in that. Now, there is this really big not a T square. Well, there is there's a big T square coming up, and then there's a grand cross, or also a grand square, however you want to call it. And Mars is absolutely involved in that. If you are interested to know more about grand squares, grand crosses, then I have actually released a video about that just this weekend. So please do check that out. But I will come back to talk about this in a second. I now want to focus a little bit on Pluto, which is retrograde at the moment and is forming a yod aspect. Also, I've recorded a video about yod too, and at the last 10 minutes of it, I talk very much about this specific yod that we're experiencing right now. But Pluto is making a quincunx to Mercury. Mercury's at the finger of yod, this formation. But, there is this kind of difficult truth that is playing out for you right now. On the one hand, you can see that the world is turning and it's going in quite a technological place. It's changing, like the relationship of humans to humans, humans to technology, humans to nature. It all feels like everything is changing. And you might be asking yourself, where is home and what is home? What is the nature of home? What is the nature of families? What's the nature of the family unit? From your perspective, it feels like things are really changing and evolving. And you might be wondering if it's evolving for the good of humanity. You might have some questions, and you'd be completely right to have questions. It's always important to ask questions when things are changing. Just to, accept the status quo as it is doesn't really give you that sense of being able to protect yourself if that's what you feel you need to do. And of course, with a strong Scorpio motif in your birth chart, you need to know that you can survive with Mars and Pluto as your rulers. So, there is this uncomfortable truth. Is this the way, how can I feel comfortable with the way the world is changing whilst up here, Mercury retrograde and where he's going is really showing you that there is a new story, a new pattern emerging for humanity, and we need to all think about it. We all need to take our place. If we sit back and accept the changes, it will take much longer. We all need to take our responsibility and to think what it is that we want to put into the world, what we want to take responsibility for, what will be the impact of how we live, how we work, how we love, how we share, how we grow. So, there's some really big thoughts going on. And Neptune here, right at the tail end of, Pisces, is also bringing up the idea that it feels like the story of humanity is teetering on a massive world societal change. And again, the impact of that is, how can I hold the possibility of this world change and also the possibility of me being a sovereign individual or being somebody who absolutely has their own ideas? How can I fit in with these new ways of being? How does this work for me? And so these are really, really big questions that you're probably asking yourself in this week ahead. Now, so that's your ruling planets that I've spoken about. I now want to start with the moon phases that we're in, because we start this week actually with the moon in Scorpio. Now, I know what it's like when the moon is going through your sign. It feels super sensitive. So the first couple of days, the 12th and 13th, I do think you're super sensitive. You're probably really quite jumpy, really quite intense, ready like a coiled spring almost. But I really want you to know that, in these first days of this week ahead, the moon is in this really quite helpful trine to Saturn, really showing you that even if you are feeling really tempestuous, really emotional, slightly vulnerable, which makes you feel uncomfortable, you do have a level of maturity that you haven't had in recent years. You have got so much more mature than you would have even suspected you would. The amount of responsibility you can carry on your shoulders is so much bigger. And so it's really important to remind yourself of that in the first couple of days. And then as the moon comes into the sign of Sagittarius, it feels like, again, there's a lot going on, and it feels like it's all about your ability to survive in the world, but your ability to provide for yourself and maybe your loved ones, obviously, if you've got loved ones in your life. So there's a really big energy as the moon is coming into Sagittarius. Like I said, the 14th is a big day. I'll explain that in a second. I just want to carry on with the moon flows. After this big day on the 14th and the 15th, it starts to slow down a bit. So I wouldn't make any big decisions, because as the moon comes into the sign of Capricorn, I think you can get a bit grounded. It's okay to maybe go out in your local community, go for a walk, do anything you can to earth yourself, do anything you can to be around practical people, be around maybe commercial people, practical commercial people, be around people that you see as being the salt of the earth, people that you can rely upon. Get that feeling that, it might seem like the world is changing and it might seem like everything is rushing off, but check in with the reality of it. That's what I recommend around the 15th and 17th, because actually what I think will happen is you'll see that, yes, the world does appear to be changing on this kind of outer level, but actually in your local environment, people are still very much people. People are a lot more normal than we realize, than we've been led to believe. If you listen to the news solely, you'll just think that, we've all turned into this kind of really weird species. But, we're actually a lot more normal than we realize. Towards the end of the week, and as we're coming into the weekend, the moon goes through a series of aspects, and it's like a roller coaster ride. She's up, she's down, she's emotional. Whoa, no, now she's intense again. And towards the end of the week, the moon will make a conjunction to Pluto. That will really bring in the heightened sensitivity again. And it's also coinciding with a day when you probably just want to be at home, be around the things that feel secure, be around the things that you know and trust and love. So, I would plan to have your weekend to yourself. Don't do anything high risk. Don't do anything where you're with people who are highly emotional, because, I think that will just not be very enjoyable. Actually, I don't think it will bring you that much joy. So bring as much space as you can to yourself around the weekend, because that weekend is leading into a full moon week, so that's kind of high intensity. So let me just finish off with a little bit of information about this big T square and also the Mercury square Uranus energy. I'm going to start with the Uranus and Mercury energy. Both Uranus and Mercury are helping you lift up. It does feel like the people around you are a little bit different, a little bit unusual. Even though I've just said that go in your community, you'll see that people are normal. Actually, there are some shocking people around as well. And towards the end of the week, people are a little less, like the people that you're connected to are a little less reliable than usual. So, give yourself, it's another reason to give yourself more space so you don't feel so mucked around by people and their frequently changing ideas. But don't keep them on the periphery. The people who are changing, whilst they do bring around quite a bit of chaos and disruption, they also bring a lot of extra consciousness into your world. And right now, Mercury retrograde is absolutely ready to capture that and put it to good use. What comes out of the mouths of your most eclectic and eccentric partners in life, your great friends, your lovers, etc., it could really lift you up and really give you a sense of where your place is in the world. So don't avoid them, but give yourself enough space so you don't have to be jerked around by them too much. But you don't want to miss their pearls of wisdom. That's the thing that I'm quite sure of. Now, the last thing, this flipping great big grand cross is massive. So, Mars and Jupiter in the 8th house is absolutely showing you that you have got this huge energy to resolve any errant psychology that still exists within your mind. Any old intuitions about things that didn't feel right, anywhere where you felt manipulated, anywhere where you felt gaslit, anywhere where you felt like things haven't been fair, you'll be able to stand up for yourself, which is really nice, right? And it also feels like there might be some help, actually. Now, you might find that help comes with a few caveats, like people are quite direct, quite strong, quite over the top. But if you feel like you can work with them, that's great. That's very helpful. But I think there's a lot of energy to resolve things that have felt stuck in your life, stuck in the family way, like where family and friends got these ideas about you. I think there is a lot of energy for a clearing. Now, that's great if your family can take a great big clearing. And by family, I'm talking about your ancient family, like your parents and your siblings and, people that have had an input into your life thus far, and who've maybe exited the scene a little bit because of any sort of residual discomfort. There is an energy to clear the air. Now, if you think they're responsible enough and you're strong enough to be in that clearing, then feel free to go into that. Trust yourself that you will find yourself in just the right place at just the right time. But if you know for a fact that you don't feel comfortable enough to deal with that clearing, I really think that the 14th is good anyway for you to do it for yourself. So, write to yourself, journal, get clear about what patterns are going on for you, and then take the time around the 14th to clear things in your own mind. You don't have to suffer alone. You don't have to suffer with these old patterns. But the first thing is to recognize it, get conscious about it, and then vow to yourself how you might be. Create some space for yourself, allow your views and beliefs to change about how you need to be in relation to other people. Now, at the same time that's going on, there's also a pressure between how formulaic you want to be with the things that you're passionate about, and then how easy it is to work with other people. There's a lot of things going on in your life right now, in particular in terms of work, and you could be collaborating all day long. But if you feel that those collaborations aren't always an easy experience, and also if you're preferring to have the control of doing your own creativity, it's a kind of difficult thing. As these grand crosses go, the layout of where yours is in this week ahead isn't as tragic as it might be for some of the other signs have got it on their angular houses. But you are going to be able to move through this. But the key word, I think, is who is in charge of your creativity, who is getting the lion's share of your imaginative energy right now. If I was in your shoes, I would do some form of, I am in your shoes, I've got Scorpio rising. I would sit and really consider what it is to be you, what it is to be your Scorpio self, how your Scorpio self brings its gifts out. Think about what's at the core of that and think about how you want to create. Do you need people around you? Do you need structures around you? Do you need to have these great big clearings to know your value? Do you know your value already? These are all the questions that are going to help you manifest beyond this week. So I hope this is a helpful forecast for you. I hope you like this new weekly format. Anyway, take care, have a good one, and catch you next week. Bye for now. Hey there, Sagittarius. This is an update taking you till Sunday, the 18th, and into the beginning of next week. So this is absolutely aimed if you've got Sagittarius rising, Sagittarius sun, Sagittarius moon. This is all about the energy of Sagittarius full stop. And its ruler is Jupiter. Now, this is where I want to start this week is, what is it that is going on with Jupiter? Jupiter is your ruling planet. And I have to say, Jupiter is involved in a lot of business in this week. And so you're most likely to be really, really feeling this. In this video, I'm also going to be talking about the waxing phase of the moon. The moon starts off in the sign of Scorpio right the way through to Aquarius. And I'm also going to talk about the two biggest aspects of this current moment in time, and Jupiter is involved in one of them for sure. So, or a couple actually. In fact, I'm going to start with Jupiter. So, in this week ahead, I'm so used to doing monthly updates. Jupiter is moving from 16 to 17 degrees in the sign of Gemini, which doesn't sound like much, like what impact could he make? But right now, Jupiter is in the middle of a lot of change. First of all, he's coming into an exact square with Saturn. He's not there yet. He will be there next week. But this square is getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And, if you want to know more about that particular square and how it plays out in your chart, or what it might mean, then please do listen to my Jupiter-Saturn square video, which I released a couple of weeks ago. This is a square position between Jupiter and Saturn that's going to be going on persistently, almost for 10 months. So this is absolutely something to pay attention to, because it's one of these moments in time, actually, that is likely to, I think, really help to grow us as a humanity, and grow you in particular. Like Jupiter is there to show us our hopes and dreams, and our ability to take an idea and really grow it, to really expand on things. It's also very much about faith and spirituality. And then Saturn, old man Saturn, is there to give us restrictions, give us problems, give us delays, but also to give us some much needed structure, and some much needed traditionalism. He's absolutely trying to temper Jupiter's wild and expanded and sometimes a bit arrogant ways. So it's going to be interesting, as you develop things, there's likely to be frustration over the next 10 months, but hey, this frustration could be just what you need. This agitation is what you may well need to actually get the best product or the best results, because you've been having to handle stresses, delays, and limitations. It gives you that chance to be a bit more creative. Now, this square is forming the base of a T-square, and that T-square is pretty much, exact over this week. But this T-square is this T-square here is formed because of Venus moving into position in the sign of Virgo, and Venus is in your 10th, in the area of your chart to do with career, to do with outward persona, how you're seen in the outside, how you take on responsibility, how you are rewarded. Are people grateful for you? All sorts of different things like that. And, Venus is actually quite beneficial in this part of your chart. She is absolutely giving you opportunities to be seen and to be experienced and to be cheered on, in fact. But she's also in opposition to Saturn, and Saturn in an opposition to Venus. It creates a feeling of, and I've got this in my birth chart, so I can talk from personal experience. It lowers our confidence. It really knocks our sense of being enough, especially, when Saturn is really reminding you of where you've come from and what your core values are and the behaviors that have come from your early childhood. And yet Venus is here saying, actually, you don't have to be that. You can be more than that. You can expand beyond that. In fact, Venus's energy is taking you outside of your usual constructs. She's showing you can be so much more. And also be so much happier and so much more joyful. And yet, Saturn is really kind of fighting you for that good, if that makes sense. Now, during this week, and this is the other bit that really ties in with you, Sagittarius, and that is that the moon will actually go into the sign of Sagittarius, and on the 14th there is it's going into opposition with Jupiter, but also during this time Mars is creeping into a conjunction. In fact, Mars is in a conjunction with Jupiter all week, but on the 14th, the very day that the moon goes into opposition in the sign of your sign, Sagittarius, I don't want to say all hell breaks loose, because that would be over-egging it, but the moon in opposition to Mars makes people absolutely much freer than usual, not because they actually are free, but because they lose their temper, because they lose their patience. They get absolutely fraught. They feel so tight, like they're pulled so thin that all of a sudden it feels like something snaps. Now, this is absolutely personal to you. And, if you're feeling emotional over this week and, you're like absolutely wearing your heart on your string, on your sleeve, it feels like, where you're very open and transparent, in particular, when the moon is in the sign of Sagittarius between the 13th and the 15th, during this time, it feels like all of your emotions are absolutely out there to be seen, to be experienced, and that people are having really strong reactions. So, you know, if you're quite vocal on things like social media, or if you're vocal in your community or in your family, or if you just walk around expressing your opinions, this is one week where you might want to have a bit of caution, a lot more than usual, because people don't have the same kind of energy or appetite to hear what is coming from your emotions and what is coming from that kind of carefree, sometimes a bit clumsy, sometimes a bit careless, sometimes a bit tactless energy. You know, this is, if ever there was a time to really think before you speak, or think before you act, this would be it. And I know that that doesn't really fly in your pattern, Sagittarius. You know, you're quite gung-ho, you don't want to be held back, and you're also quite philosophical, and, you know, probably of the mindset, well, look, it's their problem if they don't like what I say. However, you know, people are absolutely filled up with unexpressed energy in this week. And on the 14th, in the confines of this energy, I think there's going to be some overspill. And because of the position of how this is landing in your chart, I just think that overspill could really, really impact you. So just exert a little bit of caution. You can think the things you want to, write them down, say them to yourself, go for a walk, leave the room if you need to, and just wait a couple of days, wait until the 15th, when this big square eases off, and then you can relax a little bit in the stoicism of Capricorn. You know, it's almost as if the dial of energy and irritation and agitation is really, really high around the late hours of the 13th into the 14th, and in the early hours of the 15th. So wait until that moment has passed and take it easy. Now, I realize that I've skipped ahead a little bit. I went into the midweek, but I want to pay a little bit of attention to the beginning of the week, because you're actually feeling quite thoughtful, quite possibly sleepy, possibly wanting to be a bit private, which is actually kind of unlike you. You know, I'm not saying you're always out socially necessarily, because a lot of Sagittarians value their freedom so much that actually they're quite happy to have their own space. But it feels that at the beginning of the week, you're really keeping yourself to yourself and having a moment to get really clear about who you are. And that's a great thing. You know, you're likely to be quite stirred at this time with the moon going through the sign of Scorpio. And it's also in this great trine to Saturn, which I really like, which I think is giving you a chance to see yourself and see what's going on in your inner mind. I think, you know, when you're dashing around doing all your stuff, and especially when you're outside of the home, even if you're on your own, I don't think you get quite the same perspective as when you're actually in your home and sat down and observing things and kind of facing yourself. I do think there's an element of facing yourself in the privacy of your own home over the first 2 days. Now, that might sound a bit scary, but actually this is almost like a maturation. You know, it's giving you the opportunity to really see what is the sum total of your energy so far. Now, it's not to say you can beat yourself up or anything like that. It's not about that. Actually, you know, what's coming up in this particular week, and then in this following 10 months, is there's a possibility that you can really transform the way you are at home, and also transform your relationships. You know, that energy is there with this Saturn and Jupiter square, and it will be really frustrating sometimes, but you know, you are coming into this time, and this this grand cross, this grand square, is going to reconstitute itself a few different times with different planets between now right the way through until we get to the end of this actual square time, you know, in 10 months time. So I really think the energy of home and your family, there's stuff to sort out. There is stuff. And, you know, in the first 2 days of this week, if you can sit down and calmly assess, just look at what's going on, almost do it as if you're not yourself, as if you're a third party looking into it. And anywhere where you feel emotional, anywhere where you feel almost like you're attacking yourself by observing what isn't quite done right, you know, where you might have a few insecurities, just note them down. You don't have to you know, smite yourself or anything like that, but observe it. It's just information, and you don't have to take it personally, because again, they're your thoughts. you don't have to use your thoughts as a stick to beat yourself with, but just observe, see it as information. Now, obviously, like I said, things could get quite energized midweek and quite stressful. But as we're coming into this Capricorn time from the 15th to the 17th, things start to calm down. It feels like you're able to attend to a few things, in particular, how to keep the money coming in particular, how to keep your work life going, and how to feel quite buoyant about who you are. I really think it's important that you do give yourself that gift of recognizing what you do right. Now, as we're ending the week, there is a bit of an emotional roller coaster, not necessarily aimed at you, but this is just the sort of energetic. This is the planetary weather we're experiencing right now. And if we were coming into land in a plane, we would say there's a little bit of turbulence. And so Saturday and into Sunday, there's this up and down roller coaster of emotions. Like you might feel energized and then feel quite suddenly the opposite of that, and then suddenly you're feeling excited. And what this is leading to is this conjunction with Pluto. Now, Pluto is a very, very strong planet, and right now it's just in your area of community, in your area of sharing, in your area of opening up, learning from others, and really getting that sense of belonging. It is going to transform your life, over the next 20 years. It's going to be changing your attitudes as to what is a good community, and how do we belong somewhere? Who do we belong to? So whatever intensity is coming up, again, just note it. It's really important for you that you are able to observe, make a note of these patterns, and step aside a little bit, especially, and I'm going to come back to this 14th of August. As Mars makes a conjunction with Jupiter, it does happen every couple of years, but you're likely to be filled up with a lot of energy to do stuff with people, and the people in your life are likely to really come across as people who have a lot of stuff going on, in particular a lot of attitudes, in particular a lot of possible egginess, that they might be a little bit agitated, a little bit more raw with how they are, and a little bit more careless. They might be speaking more vociferously. So there is going to be the opportunity to learn a lot about yourself through the other people. I always think this area of the chart, what Gemini means to you, it's like a huge mirror of what you're not prepared to look at in yourself. So if you're finding people a little bit too vociferous, you might choose to say, well, maybe I'm a bit like that, and actually consider it for a minute. Whatever is going on is actually for your best, believe it or not. Things are clearing after they get tense, but it's really to put you under a bit of pressure so that your unconscious mind starts to come up with solutions. So you start to really play not from your tried and tested techniques and strategies, but something new comes of it. So, and I know how much the Sagittarian energy loves something new. The last thing then, and I think you'll probably like this because this could actually really be quite beneficial. The position of Mercury right now, which is retrograde, is actually in the part of your chart at the beginning of the week that is absolutely about career expression, and maybe how you can increase the value of things in terms of what it is that you do, the sort of commercial side of it. But you're now rethinking things. Right now you're going through a bit of a rethink, and you're coming back into this idea of your personal freedom, your personal space, your personal right to be yourself. And your individualism is really showing up as a key theme. And towards the end of the week, this is on the whole week, but towards the end of the week, it gets really, really intense. Uranus is really creating a need for change in the way that you're running your life and doing things. And so all of this, I actually think, ties together. You might be getting ready to leave the community you're in, or leave the home you're in, or leave the safety of your life a little bit to experience something a bit wilder. Now, I'm not saying to drop everything. And of course, this is just a serving suggestion. I know you make your own decisions for sure, but just observe the wildness that's coming up. Observe what you are needing, what you're craving. If you're feeling dissatisfied, it's most likely because you're not creating enough risk or unexpected energy for yourself. And this Mercury retrograde is bringing up new thoughts. So I think this is quite an interesting time. If you're hearing the call of the wild, take note. There's a reason for that. One last thing, if you are interested in knowing more about this grand cross, if you've got something like this in your birth chart, then please do check out my recently released video, I think called Grand Cross, in fact. There is also, if you're fascinated by Mercury retrograde, I've done a retrograde video, but more importantly, there is another aspect going on, which I don't have time to tell you about today, but I've told you about it in this video called the Oh My Yod. So if you check that out in the last 10, 15 minutes, it absolutely lays out also how Mercury retrograde is working with Pluto and also Neptune. So there you go, Sagittarius. Have a great week ahead. Hope you like the new weekly format. If you do, let me know. And yes, I'll see you next week. Bye for now. Hi Capricorn. So this is your update for the week ahead, taking you roughly until Sunday the 18th, and actually beyond that. You know, I really think it is absolutely important to recognize that this is a massive week, and I couldn't possibly have captured the energy of this within a monthly reading. Now, this is aimed for you as an ascendant, Capricorn as the sun, Capricorn as the moon, whichever of these three energies is playing out in your life a lot. Suffice to say, the energy of Capricorn is true for you. And this reading is about the energy of Capricorn, you know, and so as such, I will be paying attention to your ruling planet, which is Saturn. Now, in this, time, Saturn is retrograde. So he's not necessarily in his strongest position. He's also in the sign of Pisces. He's been there for quite a while. He moved in, I can't remember now. I think March of last year, 2023. So he's been there a while. That's off the top of my head. I might be wrong. But the most important thing is Saturn is moving into a square with Jupiter right now. In fact, you know, this has been coming on for a while. He's already in a square, but he's moving into an exact square, which is happening, I think, on the 19th next week. But this square is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And the square between Saturn in Pisces and Jupiter in Gemini is playing out now. And lasting for a good 10 months. And during that 10 months, it's also going to cross into Aries and Cancer. So this isn't just a square with certain tensions. This is a square with transforming tensions. Now, I've recorded a video called, I think, Grand Cross. Because when you've got a long-lasting square like this, it's quite possible that a slightly faster planet moves in to create a T-square, and then the moon moves in to create a grand cross or also a grand square. And these are moments of extreme tension. Now, we've got one this week, and we also have one in September. And so I'm unpacking it. In this video, Grand Cross, I do tell you about that. But if this is forming in this week, and in particular, the moon phase, which is a growth moon phase, is absolutely bringing out our emotions a lot more. When it goes into the sign of Sagittarius, boom, there is this big cross affecting your ruling planet. So this is definitely a big week. What I'm going to do is just quickly pace out the moon phase and then talk about this biggest aspect that is coming up and also impacting your ruling planet. And then also finally tell you about the Mercury square Uranus on the 18th. There's a lot going on. So I hope this all makes sense and I hope this is useful. Right. The moon phase we're in, as we're starting this week, starts in the sign of Scorpio, in a part of your, I guess, energy field that's related to friendships, networks. It's really relating to how you connect with the outer world. You know, it's not about your immediate intimacy with, you know, your partner and your family. This is how you're connecting and also how you're co-creating in a really big and complex world of differing needs. Now, this intensity that is coming up from the moon, you know, the sign of Scorpio is very, very intense and deep as a moon sign. And so you may well find for the first couple of days, you're feeling a little bit, what's the word? A little bit deep, a little bit introverted, maybe not quite so desirable, like desiring of being necessarily with your friends, in particular towards the end of the 13th, when the moon is in an opposition to Uranus. You know, if you are with your friends, be warned about what you do, because you're likely to go a little bit crazy, or, you know, the tensions that people seem to be carrying right now just seem a little bit far out, you know, a little bit different, a little bit surprising and shocking. Then as the moon heads into the sign of Sagittarius, it's an interesting one because, the sign in Sagittarius often, the moon in Sagittarius often makes us speak a lot more freely. And for you, it's also deeply, deeply personal when this stuff comes up and when you unburden yourself, when the moon's in Sagittarius. It's funny because the area that is highlighted in your chart is absolutely to do with your privacy and your need to be yourself, and also your blind spot, and also how you might want to be free to really be yourself in your private time. And so this moon going through this area is absolutely stirring things up for you. And whilst it's stirring things up for you, that is when on the 14th we have this massive energy. The first thing, how this relates to you is the moon will be in a square to Saturn. Now, that's often a time when we feel a little bit cold, where we feel a little bit emotionally sterile. So you may well find that it just appears there's a lot of like a lot of noise outside of your head, lots of people belly aching about stuff. And so you're feeling a bit emotionally sterile, like you just want to calm down. You just want to be relaxed and comfortable in your own space without anyone pushing their views or their opinions in particular on you. So you may well choose to insulate yourself at that time. Also around the 14th, the moon is in a square to Venus, but also in a square to Saturn. And Venus and Saturn are in an opposition. This particular aspect often leads you to feel less comfortable with the people around you. You often feel like you're a little bit working to cross purposes, which is kind of funny because I think I've referenced cross purposes in my Grand Cross video, but it feels like there's no real connecting energy between you and your friends. Maybe you feel like you're a bit disconnected and you can't quite work out how to switch on to each other. And Venus is also highlighting that you might feel better being a bit freer. You might feel better going out for a long walk or seeing a different vista or getting lost in a book that's going to expand your mind somehow. So I do feel that around this 13th to 15th in particular, there's this really strong need to mind your own business and to get a bit of peace and quiet from the madding crowd. Now, of course, like I've said, Saturn is also in a square to Jupiter and also Mars, because on the 14th, Mars and Jupiter come together for actually quite a common alignment that happens every 2 years. But in the sign it's in, it hasn't happened there for 35 years. And the time before that was 1942. So it's pretty uncommon. This energy of Mars and Jupiter in the sign of Gemini is absolutely creating this kind of sudden rush of energy to get things done, to get really busy, maybe to do something about your health. And so you might want to watch out actually that you don't overdo it, because the energy that is coming up with Jupiter in, this part of your chart and Mars in this part of your chart is it's likely to get you to take action about your life and to work on the things that are working and also let go of some of the things that aren't working. In particular, your Saturn, your natal planet, your ruling planet is absolutely encouraging you to let go of anything that's not working in your life, more so now than ever. And with the energies of, this square as it appears, I think you might be letting go of people if they're not quite right. If it feels like they've got a completely different mind view to you, a mindset, and it just feels like it's noise, you may well be thinking, do you know what, I'd rather not have you chirping in my ear like that, please go away. Now, what I would say about that is just give it some time. As the moon comes into the sign of Capricorn on the 15th, you'll start to come back into your own again. You'll start to feel a bit more grounded, start to feel a bit more like the Capricorn you are. So not so swayed, not so pulled from pillar to post. And of course, if you think about this aspect, it does look like you're being pulled in 4 directions. So yeah, just wait a couple of days, the 15th to the 17th, you'll be coming back into your own pattern. Now on the 17th, I believe we've got this conjunction between Pluto and the moon. And, as the moon is in Aquarius, we've got this real, such a lot of energies. It does feel like the weekend is an emotional roller coaster. So again, whatever piece you're creating for yourself towards the end of the week, like towards Thursday, Friday, as you're coming into Saturday and Sunday, you might choose to just have a weekend to yourself, have a weekend to plan. I mean, where the moon is, it's really helping you focus on your earnings, your potential, your purpose, why you're here, and your true value. So that's something of interest. Now, the last thing I want to share with you, I think, is the emergence of sort of like Mercury retrograde and how that is happening in these sort of big, how it's activating in aspects. So in particular, at the end of the week, there's this tight square between Mercury retrograde and Uranus. It's bringing up a whole new level of creativity. You've been in the reference to wanting to examine your freedom, how much freedom you have right now, how much space you have to be yourself and think your own thoughts. Mercury is absolutely starting that process. And with the retrograde, you're having to backtrack a little bit. You're having to think, okay, here I am with my thoughts right now, but how did I arrive at these conclusions? And are these conclusions still valid? Have I made an error somewhere? And so, this energy is coming back into a place of your inner psychology, and you might be considering some of the ways you've been in the past and how effective they were. Now, at the same time, Uranus in this part of your chart, which is, again, very freedom loving and absolutely encouraging you to do the things that bring you joy and bring you it inspire a whole level of new passion and birthing in you. It's a deeply, deeply creative place. You might also work out that some of your creativity is coming from your inner psychology. So I do think that what's going on around the 18th is a deeply creative process for yourself. And it might bring up some shock revelations about how you've been in the past, or some of the expectations you've had on you that have quashed your creativity and squashed that person back into a box. Maybe it's time for you to get rid of the box altogether and to let yourself out and give yourself the freedom. Who knows? Now, this Mercury is also forming a yod, and I don't have time to talk about that today, but I have recorded something about the Mercury yod, a video I released yesterday called Oh My Yod. And in the last 10-15 minutes, I actually talk about this aspect between Pluto and Neptune and Mercury. So if you're interested in that, check that out too. Anyway, I think this whole week, Capricorn, is about you realizing that you're a lot stronger than you have been thinking recently. And it's also about getting clear about who you want in your life, and which community you're subscribing to, and which thought leaders you want in your life, and also which people you really don't want. Now, I'm aware that right now there's a lot of anguish between people, especially if they notice that somebody thinks differently to you. I've noticed a lot of values-based separations. I'm not necessarily standing for those, because I do think we can find peace and harmony. But in this week ahead, you might actually be quite wise to separate yourself a little bit, create a bit of space between you and those people whose values really don't turn you on at all. So I'm going to leave that there. You've got enough going on in yourself. You've got enough strength. You've got enough thoughtfulness, and you've got enough patience to really be able to work out something great for yourself. So there you go. Hope you have a great week ahead. And if you like this weekly format, join me next week. Lots of love. Bye for now. Okay, so Aquarius. Now, this is an interesting one. This weekly forecast, it's a new weekly forecast, by the way, so please do let me know if you like this format. I'm going to be looking at the whole sign of Aquarius, not really just Aquarius Ascendant or Aquarius Sun or Aquarius Moon. I'm going to be considering the energy of Aquarius and what's going on with that energy. So it could apply to your Sun, your Moon, or your or your ascendancy or rising sign, if that's what you want to call it. So who are the rulers of Aquarius? Well, they would be Saturn, which is retrograde right now, and Uranus. Both of them are very slow moving planets, and they really do create some really big energies between them. And it just so happens that both of them are involved in a really big set of planetary pictures, or planetary weather, we could say, because these pictures are creating a really big energetic that is shifting, stressing, tightening, and hopefully inspiring people to create something new for themselves. And of course, the energy of new and innovation is a really, really strong energy that you carry as, I think, quite a high ideal. Another one that I think is highly idealistic for you is this sense of freedom, the need for a sense of individuality and freedom. So I am going to be talking about that in this week. Now, I'm going to start with the moon phase because I think that's kind of important. Now I'm looking at a weekly basis. The moon is absolutely important. We're in a waxing gibbous phase, which is a growth cycle, and things are starting to manifest. It feels like we don't have to put too much effort in. Things are already moving. The ball is already moving, and we've got the impetus and we've got the energy to get things done. I love this moon phase. In fact, I'm born in this moon phase. So it's really, really helpful. Now, what's going on here? As we start this week, the moon is in Scorpio, and the sort of energy of Scorpio for you is bringing up a sense of power, which is an interesting one for you because Aquarius doesn't appear to really need power necessarily. It might appreciate some systems at play, but the sign of Aquarius absolutely wants to feel free to be themselves. And I wonder if the need to have control, to feel free is actually playing out right now. But the moon in the sign of Scorpio is certainly bringing up a lot to do with your personal power, how effective you are, how you're standing in the world, and, how is your career going at the moment? You may well find that your energies are absolutely focused on your output. Are you outputting enough? Are you productive right now is probably the big question. And I would absolutely put as much energy as I could into these first couple of days of this week ahead, because you can get a lot done. This is actually quite a perfectionist moon, I think, but you are likely to feel a little bit more visible, a little bit more vulnerable, because people can see you and connect into you. But I think this is quite productive. Then the moon changes and it goes into the sign of Sagittarius between the 13th and 15th. Now, this is where it gets interesting because, ordinarily the moon in Sagittarius is quite a social thing for you. It creates a sense of freedom. It creates a sense of friendship. It creates a sense of shared visions and goals, and a sense that you are connected. I really like it because it helps you feel connected. But in this particular week, there's a few different things playing out that are creating the idea that we're disconnected. Now, one of these is the position of Saturn in relationship to the moon. As the moon comes into the sign of Sagittarius, it's going to go into a square with Saturn. And moon Saturn squares tend to feel a bit sterile at times, so our emotional availability seems to be really, really low. Also, the moon is going to be in a square to Venus, so we might not be feeling quite so accommodating to people. We might be feeling slightly snippy, slightly envious, slightly not quite right. It feels like maybe your relationships are a little bit competitive, possibly. Now, your ruling planet is, in opposition to Venus. Now, I've got this opposition in my birth chart, and it often makes us feel, especially when it's triggered, these times with these oppositions between Venus and Saturn, they can be quite a lonely experience where we feel like we are alone. We have to do things on our own. And actually, when we are with the wrong company, that is real loneliness. This is the key thing. Are you alone or are you lonely? And which feels good? I mean, for me, I think the word alone, actually, I relate to space and the possibility to be myself, the ability to think really, really clearly. You might not have that, and lonely sounds like a condition or a state of mind that possibly feels a bit sad, Whatever is going on, there is a feeling of disconnection. And you might be comfortable with that because it might just be what you need right now, to cut off and to just feel like you're managing your own life, you're focusing on yourself and your hopes, and also your value, your purpose, really, really getting to the nitty gritty of it. but if you are already in a loneliness mind track, you know, if you're already feeling a bit broken or heartbroken, or if things aren't going so well in your relationships, around the 14th, 15th, this is a real sort of time to note that you're going to need some extra resources. You need to do something to keep yourself buoyant, have the right people around you that keep you buoyant, or doing the right things that help you feel good. Any kind of nurturing or nourishing for yourself that you're giving to yourself. You know, if you could give to yourself what you would give to your lovers, I think that would be really quite beneficial. And also, one of your ruling planets, Saturn, is in a long-term square to Jupiter. Now, this has been coming in for a couple of weeks now, but it's really coming into the first exact square of the set. And during this time, you'll need to expand and explore, and to be kind of joyful about life is really quite stressed, because for every expansion you're making, it feels like the brakes are on. So it's like driving forwards with the brakes on, the handbrake on, and you don't know when you're going to be able to lurch forwards somewhat, or when you might stall your car. And so it's really difficult. It's a real balancing act, and this energy is going on for a good 10 months. And so, you know, what you might be better to do is to focus on, okay, I've got my long-term goals. Like, send your goals right out into the longer term, you know, maybe to the end of this aspect, you know, in 10 months time, or maybe way further, but create your first step as being your first output, as being something that's achievable if you go slowly. And you might just want to start driving your car really, really slowly and very, very cautiously. So you're not going to stall it, but that you are slowly gaining speed, and always gaining speed. So that's the kind of approach I would choose. So, you know, to be able to do that, you're going to need a lot of presence of mind. And again, if you're feeling disconnected, or overwhelmed by people in your life, you might choose to disconnect. So I think emotional disconnection is something that is coming up as quite a strong theme in this week ahead. And not so that you're sat on your own like Billy No Mates, but so that you can actually focus on the job at hand, which is, who are you? What's your purpose right now? Do you feel like you're on track? And do you realize that with this square going on, you can actually achieve something really quite remarkable? So, you know, a little bit of patience for yourself is going to pay dividends. Now, after the 14th, in fact, let me just talk about the 14th first. So yes, we've got these squares going on, but I haven't really spoken about the grand cross energy, you know, on the 14th, when all of these are playing out. So that's the Moon, Venus, Jupiter and Saturn, all in opposition or square to each other. This is a very, very tense day. And those energies are really felt over how you're pleasing yourself and how other people have got expectations for you. And also some of the expectations you might have for yourself versus what is actually feasible to create versus what you create with other people. You may well find you need to find this kind of mid spot where you realize you can only do what you can do. You might choose to work with people, you might not, but you need to keep the freedom to be able to choose in the moment. And how can you feel peaceful about your output? How can you feel peaceful even if you're not earning lots of money or seeing the direct rewards from it? How can you know to be peaceful about being the right person to live this life right now? It feels like there's a lot to do with your achievement and ability to create. And a lot of noise coming from other people. So on the 14th, I really do think it's a good day to, if you're not up for company, absolutely find a way to work on your goals in the privacy of your own home. Now, as this dissipates on the, you know, from the 15th to the 17th, you should feel the tension come down a little bit as the moon moves off. The moon is coming in again into this place of contemplation, but also practical contemplation. You know, if you give yourself that space, I think you'll be able to absolutely realize the maturity that you have, the growth that you've done. And actually you realize you don't need other people necessarily. They're great to have in your life, but sometimes there are some steps that you need to take on your own. And, you know, as we come to the end of the week, there is this real sort of dynamic feeling around the 17th as the moon and Pluto are coming into their conjunction. All of a sudden, it feels like you know how to regain the emotional power to change and transform your life. And if anything, this week, with all its little twists and turns and unique tensions, you know, as you're coming to this weekend, it feels like there's a really strong sense of information. There's a real strong sense of channeled knowing, like all of a sudden, you know what you're meant to be doing. Now, I do think thereafter it's a little bit bumpy. We're coming in for a bumpy landing to the end of the week. The reason being is, the moon is making a lot of aspects to all the planets, one after the other. So it feels like, 4 seasons in one day. But there's another reason. As we get to the end of the week, your other ruling planet, which is Uranus, is absolutely in the tightness of its square with Mercury retrograde, which is big. These two planets are mind planets. Uranus is absolutely about the channeled wealth of information out there and the innovation and the need to be independent and to be free to make your own mind up. And Mercury retrograde is really helping you to detach from the expectations that you felt obliged to live up to. And it's really bringing yourself back into your own stories about who you are and how you are in relationships. You might find that other people's ideas are quite shocking around this time, and you're learning a lot from it. So as we're coming to the end of the week, Uranus, if you identify more with the Uranian energy, this is really quite mind-blowing. If you're ready for a breakthrough with something, this could be it. All of a sudden, the thought that leads to the freedom and possibility, boom, there it is. There's a couple of other things I just want to touch on. And that is, this Grand Cross, I've recorded a video about Saturn and Jupiter and how they're playing out in your chart for the next 10 months or so. So you might choose to have a look at that if you haven't already, or remind yourself about it periodically, because it does make 3 exact squares. And given that Saturn is one of your rulers, that would be helpful. I've also released a video about the Grand Cross right now, and the one that's reforming in September, which again will involve Saturn, your ruler. So that could give you a bit of a heads up. And last of all, the position of Mercury right now is in a yod this week. Now, I haven't mentioned it to you because it's not showing up in your chart as strongly as it would, show up in other charts. However, the yod that's coming up, I've recorded about it in a yod video, and in the last 10-15 minutes you'll get an update about how that's likely to lend its energies into your week ahead as well. So there's a lot going on that I couldn't possibly all fit into this little hopefully small but useful forecast for you. I hope you've liked this new format. If you have, please give me the thumbs up or give me a share, or write a comment. Tell me what you like about it, what works, maybe what doesn't. And if you like it, hopefully I'll see you next week. Anyway, have a great week and speak to you soon. Bye for now. Okay, so Pisces, how is this week lining up for you? We've got this massive week coming up, and yeah, you've got, sorry, a bit of a sigh there, because, wow, this is such an involved process doing forecasts on a week-by-week basis, because I'm including the moon now, and that's creating so much change. So this forecast for you is, for whether you're a Pisces sun, a Pisces moon, a Pisces ascendant, it really does lend itself perfectly to the ascendants. But I'm really honoring the Pisces energy here. So I'm paying a bit more attention to the ruling planets of Pisces, which you may know are Jupiter and Neptune. Now, it just so happens that both of your personal planets are involved in some really big patterns in this week ahead. I've also recorded 2 other videos about these unique patterns, but I'm going to touch on them in this video. So let's get started. So your 2 rulers are Jupiter and Neptune. Jupiter's moving from 16 to 17 degrees in the sign of Gemini. Neptune is right at the tail end of Pisces. It's going to be hanging around this point for a while. It's at 29 degrees in the sign of Pisces. It's right here, getting ready to come into Aries next year. So there's a lot going on, and the position of Jupiter right now, Jupiter's doing a lot this week. So first of all, there is an emerging applying square coming up from Saturn to Jupiter. And it's been coming on for a couple of weeks, and it's going to be perfect, exact, next week on the 19th, on the day of the full moon. And this square is going to come into reality, almost like you're changing your focus. Imagine you're tuning into a radio channel, if you can remember what that's like. You would get the exact channel, you get the exact clarity, and then it might just come slightly off the tuning, but you can still hear the channel, and it comes on, you might just nudge the dial a bit, and it comes on absolutely perfectly again, and then it fades off, and then it comes in perfectly a third time. So over the next 10 months, we've got that energy with Saturn and Jupiter. You know, Saturn and Jupiter are making 3 exact squares where you really feel the frequency of them. And then for the rest of the 10 months, that frequency is absolutely in the background. It's the background noise. It's the background planetary picture for us, the planetary weather. And of course, Jupiter's one of your ruling planets. So Jupiter, all about expansion and possibility and hope and feeling good, you know, is in a stressy position with Saturn. Now, Saturn is all about rules and regulations and also structure, making things better, making improvements and taking your time to do that, which, you know, Jupiter doesn't like so much, because Jupiter likes to do things now. And in this week as well, we've got Mars coming into an alignment with Jupiter. So the two of them are together. Now, these two get together every 2 years, very, very regularly. However, in the last 100 years, they've only come together in the sign of Gemini 3 times. This time is the 3rd time. So, you know, this is unusual for Jupiter and Mars to come together in the sign of Gemini, because it's all about information. You know, Gemini is about information, about friendships, communication. It's about lots and lots of different ideas. Its energy is, you know, so dappled. You know, there's like these bright spots of energy in all the different places. You know, Gemini keeps a slightly unfocused mind. It keeps its eyes on lots of different things. And so having Jupiter, which is expansive, and Mars, which is really direct and highly charged and energetic, having these two in a sign that is kind of unfocused or focused on lots of things, like it's multipolar. You know, it's not bipolar, it's not polarized. You know, it's not between one or the other. You know, the Gemini periphery is full of lots of different points of focus. So we've got this very intense, expansive focus on lots of different energies at the same time. This is a lot for you, especially seeing as it's really highlighted at home. It feels like there's lots to do, possibly lots to do with your family relationships, possibly lots to do in terms of your goals about where you want to live. Do you want to live in one place or 2 places? Do you want to change the way you're living? You know, this is giving you a big shot of energy in this particular week. And then Saturn here is really getting you to define how you are in life. Like what are you about? But, you know, Saturn for a while has been kind of making you a lot more serious as a Pisces than you have been in a long, long time. So I do get that you're really wanting to get your life right. And that is one of the big energies for this week ahead. You want to get your life right. Now, the other big aspect that is happening, sorry, this Jupiter and Saturn thing is also growing into a square, which I'm going to talk about. It's happening midweek. This is all this is one of the most stressful times of the week. So I'm going to talk about how that grows and then how it dissipates in a minute. But before I go any further, the other ruling planet of yours is Neptune, which is retrograde at the moment. But it's here, but it's forming what's known as a yod formation in this sort of planetary picture for the week ahead. And it's making it with Pluto. So it's Pluto, Neptune, and then Mercury retrograde that starts in Virgo and ends in Leo. Your Neptune energy right now, or how you manage creativity and spirituality, how you understand the real kind of etheric reason as to why you are here, that is being expressed through any discomfort with how you feel you are communicating, how you feel your role in the world. You know, I talk about this in the video that I've called Oh My Yod. So if you do want to know more about the overall energy in much greater detail, I've recorded 10-15 minutes of that in Oh My Yod right at the end of the video. But suffice to say, the position of Mercury right now, which is retrograde and, you know, coming back into the sign of Leo, what I think it's meaning for you is that where you've taken your opinions, or where your opinions have been maybe conjoined with the opinions of other people, where you've had a certain amount of social agreement and cohesion, right now things are stepping back. You're actually looking over your shoulder a little bit and thinking, you know, I'm not entirely sure I got that right. Or it might not be that you don't think you've got it right. Forgive me, sorry. Let me take some water. You might not think that you've not got it right, but you might think that you're slightly out of resonance with the people around you. And so as Mercury is retrograding out of this very sort of social energy, represented by Virgo for you, and back into the sign of Leo, you're starting to think, okay, well, what do I think? What do I believe about myself? What stories do I have about my life? What stories do I have about the way I need to live my life? And what is defining me? What do I need? It's almost like you're coming back into yourself for a little bit. You're really coming back to see who you are, because, you know, the Pisces energy is really flowing and really, really changing. And one of the difficulties about a really strong Pisces energy is how easy it is to get influenced, you know, unless you've got a really strong ascendant or a really strong set of other two energies in your chart. You know, the Pisces energy can get very easily influenced by stronger characters. And so I think, you know, this Mercury energy right now in the Yod is absolutely, you know, you've been influenced by other people, and your ruling planet Neptune is really asking you, it is time to individuate a bit. You know, like Neptune here is actually showing us that humanity is changing quite considerably. Like the story of humanity is changing, but how do you get into balance? The story of humanity and the story of you, how do they work together? What part are you playing in the story of humanity right now? What is your role? And so this is an energy that's going on throughout the whole week, which I think you'll be kind of considering quite deeply. So yeah, be aware of that. So both your rulers are in some very, very deep conversations. You know, they're creating a lot of awareness in you to work through and to I think this is a week of realizations, in particular at the end of the week on the 18th, when Mercury retrograde is also in a very super tight square with Uranus. You know, and you may well find that any feelings of coming back into yourself are now putting you slightly at odds with the people that you live near. You know, I guess you're also thinking about the nature of community. Now, I've mentioned this a few times in Pisces updates, because Uranus has been really sort of impacting how you do community, how you feel within your community. Do you feel like a really strong member of it? Do you feel like the community is influencing you in such a way that you don't feel quite comfortable? Well, however that's going, I just think there's more awareness about your own role in giving up your power, and your own awareness about reclaiming your power and how to be yourself when you don't quite fit in quite the same way as you thought you did. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes. Now I'd like to focus on the waxing gibbous moon phase, you know, which is with us all this week. So the week starts with the moon in the sign of Scorpio, you know, and Scorpio energy for you, I think, is intense, but it's also creating this sense of inquiry, a sense of wanting to deep dive into all the things you don't know. So there's a bit of a mystery going on, and you're probably quite intense in it. I would absolutely recommend you make the most of these couple of days to maybe inquire about some of these things I've mentioned already. You know, allow your mind to consider different possibilities. Like, read that book that you've wanted to read, because it's relaxing, and everything that you take in is taking you to a new place. And I think that's one of the key points of the first 2 days, is how can you maybe escape yourself a little bit, and in the escape get information that gives you more, that helps you work out who you are right now. So, you know, the more you find out what's out there through your own sense of self-inquiry and mystery, the more you're feeding back into yourself. It's really, really helpful. Now, this is where, you know, when the moon goes into the sign of Sagittarius, things get really, really quite intense, because, you know, Sagittarius is another Jupiter ruled sign. So there is a bit of an understanding about it. You know, I think Sagittarius and Pisces energy, whilst they're different elements, I do think they have an understanding of each other. They share a quite a strong mythical energy, or a sense of spiritual philosophy, which I think is quite helpful. But the moon is also coming into a very, very prominent place for you, a place where you feel a lot more visible, a lot more seen, Now, it can be a place that you get rewarded in and where you feel like you're on track and where you're busy with your output, really considering what you're doing in life and doing more of it. How can you take on more responsibility and stuff? So the moon here is absolutely really sensitive to criticism because you've put yourself out there, you've laid yourself out there, and all of a sudden, when you're visible, it's like the slings and arrows could come your way. So you may feel visible. And if you don't like feeling visible, then maybe don't be, choose to not be so visible between the 13th and 15th. The really big moment is on the 14th when the moon is in exact opposition to Jupiter, one of your ruling planets. And also on that day, Mars is exactly in a conjunction with Jupiter. So the Mars energy is direct and expansive and harsh and really fired up. And Mars and Jupiter together is absolutely, ready to take on the world. And yet it feels like there's stuff on the outside that is kind of looking in. So it's interesting. There's this energy of wanting to create real big change for yourself at home, whilst at the same time, you still recognize that there's things that you need to do in the outside world. And the moment you start to change, the moment your output in the big world changes too. And it's your comfort with that. How comfortable are you with that? At the same time, Venus is in a square to Mars, and Jupiter is also in a square to the moon. And that makes us a lot more impetuous, a lot more not playing quite so kindly as usual. But Venus, I'm not saying you're not acting so kindly, but Venus is in an area of your chart associated with the people in your life. It feels like at the same time that you're going through all this, it feels like other people aren't being so kind. They're not necessarily being so helpful. They might be a bit envious of the creative potential you have. They might be a little bit envious of how inspired you are or how fired up you are right now to make changes in your life. And interestingly, with Saturn in your first and with Venus in the sign of Virgo, the opposition between Venus and Saturn often leaves us feeling a bit disconnected. So, for your Pisces energy that likes to feel connected to everyone, even if you don't have to be with them, you can dial into people. You've got this sort of intuitive connection. Around the 14th, you might be feeling really disconnected and actually quite off. And need some time for yourself. As the week progresses between the 15th and 17th, when the moon goes into the sign of Capricorn, I think things can get a bit easier. It might be a bit safer to go for a coffee with somebody and just chew the fat. You might just want to be out in the world. You might just want to be sort of connecting with nature, connecting with your local energy, to sort of reintegrate yourself a little bit, to feel a bit more like you're in the world, in the real practical world. I think the moon in Capricorn actually can help you feel a lot more grounded and a lot more stable. So I think this is actually quite helpful. In particular, it's going to make a lovely trine to Uranus, and it's also going to make a lovely trine to Mercury, which will be really, really helpful. It's like the more grounded you are in the world, the more your inspiration is coming out. As we come to the end of the week, we've got a very intense moon Pluto conjunction that really brings up some very, very strong feelings. And I think the weekend as a whole, the moon is making all these different aspects to planets, and it just feels like there's one emotion after another, after another, after another. But where the moon is in your chart at this time is in a place where you need a bit of rest and relaxation. So this weekend is naturally a time when you might choose to retire and just dig up your garden, or I don't know, just hang out with your pet or hang out with your favorite person. It's a time not to venture out too much. So, I see this as quite a quiet week where you might be withdrawing a little bit, with the exception of the beginning of the week where you might be a bit more outdoors, and towards the 15th, 17th, when again, you might choose to be outdoors. But I would say the midweek is much better spent like inquiring on your own and not putting yourself in the way of other people's whims and in the way of other people's sudden changing moods. So there you go. I hope that was helpful to you, Pisces. Please let me know if you like this new weekly forecast. If you do, and I'll carry on and I'll see you next week. If I can be of any help, then just check out my details below. It's very easy to connect in with me. So anyway, thanks a lot. Have a great week and catch up with you soon. Bye for now. So there you go. That's the week ahead forecast. I hope you like the forecast. Normally I do it on a monthly basis. I'm actually thinking now I want to do weekly because it really feels like I'm really in touch with what's going on with all the signs. So let me know, please do. Let me know in the comments if you like it. I appreciate that I started recording this a little bit too late. I'm going to get the next week one out a little bit early, and that's my plan, is to release this every Sunday. So let's see if I can manage that. Lot going on, isn't there? So yes, like I mentioned in all the forecasts, there are other videos that are helpful to help you unpack the energies that are going on. I really do think there's stuff happening in the world this week, like big stuff that might make us go, oh, some big occurrences. Given that, we've got Mercury, with like Jupiter and Mars right now, to me, it feels like the energy of the media is going to go berserk. And I do think that could affect our computers. I do think it could affect all of our digital information, also our digital currency, if we've got those. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm not a financial astrologer, though I would like to be at some point. Just observe what's going on. If I can be of any help, all of my details are below. I just invite you to book a reading with me. I put my diary online. So if you see a spot where that you've got the time, you want that diary, you want that sort of consultation, then just get in touch. Very, very simple. Anyway, lots of love to you. Thanks for joining me today. And hopefully catch you again real soon. Bye for now.